Marry a stranger in 48 hours or lose everything you've built. Those were the words that shattered Vivian Hart's perfect world. At 30, she'd conquered Wall Street, crushed every rival, and built an empire most men twice her age could only dream of. But her grandfather's ultimatum wasn't just cruel, it was calculated. The groom? Caleb Rowan, a broke mechanic with calloused hands and a 6-year-old daughter. But here's what Vivienne didn't know. The man moving into her penthouse wasn't who he claimed to be. Stay until the end to discover his true identity. Hit like and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The mahogany doors of Sterling Global's boardroom slammed open with enough force to rattle the crystal chandelier. Vivian Hart didn't flinch. She'd learned early that power wasn't about reacting, it was about making others react to you. You're late, grandfathers. Richard Sterling moved into the room like winter itself had taken human form. 83 years old, spine straight as rebar, wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. His eyes, the same ice blue as Vivian's, swept over the empty conference table before settling on his granddaughter. "Clear the room," he said. Vivian's assistant, Marcus, hesitated in the doorway. She gave him the slightest nod, and he vanished, pulling the doors shut behind him. The click of the lock echoed like a gunshot. "I have a meeting with the Tokyo investors in 20 minutes, Vivian said, not bothering to stand. "Whatever this is, you're getting married." The words hung in the air like smoke. Vivian's fingers, poised over her tablet, went still. Then she laughed, a cold, sharp sound that could cut glass. "I'm sorry, what?" Richard moved to the windows overlooking Manhattan. 42 floors below, the city crawled with people who'd kill for a fraction of what Vivian had. "You heard me? You have 48 hours to accept my terms, or I invoke Clause 17 of the company charter." Vivian's blood turned to ice water. Clause 17. The nuclear option. Written into Sterling Global's founding documents by her great-grandfather in 1947, it gave the company's original shareholder, currently Richard, the power to transfer controlling interest to a designated successor if the acting CEO was deemed unfit to preserve the family legacy. "You can't be serious." Her voice came out steady, but her heart was jackhammering against her ribs. "I've tripled this company's value in 5 years. Our stock price is irrelevant." Richard turned from the window. "You're 30 years old, Vivian. Unmarried. No children. No ties to anything except quarterly earnings reports." "That's prehistoric thinking." "That's reality." He crossed to the table, placed a manila folder in front of her. "Derek Chen has been circling Sterling Global like a vulture for 2 years. He's already approached 3 board members with buyout offers. If I declare you unfit and transfer my shares, he'll have majority control within a month." Derek Chen. The name alone made Vivian's jaw tighten. Ruthless corporate raider, known for gutting companies and selling them for parts. He'd been sniffing around Sterling Global since Vivian had outbid him for a telecommunications contract in Seoul. "So you're blackmailing me into marriage to prevent a hostile takeover?" She shoved the folder back across the table unopened. "There are other ways. None that I trust." Richard's voice went quiet, which somehow made it worse. "Your father would have understood. Before the accident, don't." Vivian stood so fast her chair rolled backward. "Don't you dare use them as leverage." Her parents. Dead 12 years now. Small plane crash off the coast of Maine. She'd been 18, freshman year at Harvard. The memory still had teeth. Richard's expression didn't change. "The family needs stability. The board needs reassurance. A marriage provides both." "To whom?" The question came out like broken glass. "What poor bastard did you bribe to—" "His name is Caleb Rowan, 32, single father. He's a mechanic at a shop in Brooklyn." The room tilted slightly. "A mechanic?" "Yes." "You want me to marry a mechanic?" "I want you to marry someone who will provide the stability this company needs without threatening your position." Richard opened the folder himself, slid a photograph across the table. He's not interested in Sterling Global. He has a daughter to raise. This arrangement is purely transactional. Vivienne stared at the photo. The man looking back at her had dark hair that needed cutting, strong jawline, work-roughened hands gripping a wrench. He wore a gray mechanic's uniform with Rowan stitched over the pocket. Not unattractive, but not the kind of man who belonged in her world. "You've lost your mind." I've protected this family for 6 decades. Richard's voice went hard. Sterling Global survives because I make difficult decisions. This is one of them. And if I refuse, then Derek Chen gets my shares. He'll install himself as CEO within a week. You'll be out. Everything your parents built, everything you fought for, gone. Vivian's nails dug into her palms. There has to be another way. There isn't. Richard moved toward the door, then paused. 48 hours, Vivian. The wedding is already arranged. Friday evening, City Hall. You'll sign a prenuptial agreement protecting Sterling Global's assets. After 1 year, you can divorce if you choose. But right now, this is the only option that keeps you in control. Why him? The question escaped before she could stop it. Why a mechanic from Brooklyn? Something flickered across Richard's face. Because he needs this as much as you do. And because sometimes the least expected choice is the safest one. Then he was gone, leaving Vivian alone with a photograph and a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. So, Marcus appeared 60 seconds later, probably alerted by whatever sixth sense good assistants developed. He took one look at Vivian's face and closed the door behind him. How bad? Get me everything on Caleb Rowan. She shoved the photo toward him. Employment records, financial history, social media, parking tickets. I want to know what brand of toothpaste he uses. On it. Marcus pulled out his phone. Should I cancel Tokyo? No. Vivian forced her breathing to steady. We proceed as planned. This is... She caught herself before saying, nothing. This is handled. But her hands were shaking when she picked up the photograph again. The report arrived at 11 p.m., delivered to Vivian's penthouse by courier. She'd spent the intervening hours in meetings, forcing herself to focus on acquisition strategies and market projections while her world tilted on its axis. Now, alone in her living room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, she finally let herself look. Caleb Rowan, born in Boston. Father deceased, mother remarried, and living in Florida. Graduated from MIT, that made her pause, with a degree in mechanical engineering. Worked for 3 years at an aerospace company before nothing. Gap in employment. Then resurfaced in New York 5 years ago as a mechanic at Romano's Auto Repair in Brooklyn. Married 7 years ago to Sarah Chen. Vivian's breath caught. Chen. Same last name as Derek. She flipped pages frantically. Not related. Sarah Chen, pediatric nurse, died 4 years ago from complications during childbirth. Left behind a daughter, Ella. 6 years old now. The pieces weren't adding up. MIT graduate working as a mechanic? Wife dying 4 years ago but only showing up in New York 5 years ago? Vivian reached for her phone. Marcus, the employment gap? Did you... Already checking, his voice came through, alert despite the hour. Those 3 years after MIT? Nothing. No tax records, no credit card activity. He basically didn't exist. People don't just stop existing. People with the right connections do. That stopped her. What are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you the file has holes big enough to drive a truck through. Papers rustled on his end. Want me to dig deeper? Vivian looked at the photograph paperclipped to the file. Caleb Rowan, caught mid-laugh at some barbecue. His daughter on his shoulders. The smile reached his eyes. He looked normal, harmless. No, she said finally. If grandfather chose him, he's already been vetted. And if grandfather's wrong? He's never wrong. The words tasted like ash. That's the problem. Friday arrived like an execution date. Vivian chose a cream-colored suit. Not white, she wasn't that much of a hypocrite. And diamond studs her mother had worn. Professional, controlled. The armor she wore into every boardroom. City Hall was exactly as depressing as expected. Fluorescent lights, scuffed linoleum, the faint smell of industrial cleaner. Richard was already there, speaking quietly with a woman in a judge's robes. No other family, no friends, just a handful of witnesses who'd been paid to forget this ever happened. Then Caleb Rowan walked in, and Vivian's carefully constructed composure cracked. The photograph hadn't lied, but it hadn't told the whole truth either. He was taller than she'd expected, probably 6'2", with the kind of build that came from actual physical work rather than boutique gym memberships. He'd cleaned up, dark suit that fit surprisingly well, hair trimmed, face freshly shaved, but there was something in the way he moved, careful, controlled, like a man used to being underestimated. A little girl clung to his hand. Ella. Dark curls, enormous brown eyes, wearing a purple dress that looked brand new. She stared at Vivian with the kind of unfiltered curiosity only children could manage. Ms. Hart. Caleb's voice was deeper than she'd expected. Educated accent, no trace of Brooklyn. I assume you've been briefed. Thoroughly. Vivian extended her hand, professional, distant. Mr. Rowan? His handshake was firm but brief. Then he crouched down to his daughter's level. Ella, this is Vivian. Remember what we talked about? The girl nodded solemnly. You're going to be my dad's wife. For a while, yes. Vivian had no idea how to talk to children. They were like tiny drunk adults, completely unpredictable. Do you have a dog? What? Ella, Caleb said gently. We talked about this. But you said she has a big house. The girl's lower lip trembled. Big houses have dogs. Vivian looked at Caleb, who had the grace to appear embarrassed. We can discuss pets later. No dogs, Vivian said flatly. Then, seeing the child's face crumple, added, But there's a doorman. His name is George. He has pictures of his dog. It was a pathetic olive branch, but Ella brightened slightly. The ceremony took 11 minutes. Vivian had timed worse conference calls. The judge recited the standard vows: love, honor, cherish, sickness, and health. All lies, all legal binding. When Caleb slid the ring onto her finger, his hands were steady. Hers weren't. You may kiss the bride. Caleb's eyes met hers. Something passed between them, acknowledgement of the absurdity maybe, or just mutual survival instinct. His kiss was brief, professional, the kind of thing you'd do at a networking event. It meant nothing. Vivian told herself it meant nothing. Congratulations, the judge said, sounding about as enthusiastic as someone reading a grocery list. You're now legally married. Richard stepped forward, envelope in hand. The prenuptial agreement countersigned by both attorneys. Vivian's assets remain separate. Mr. Rowan receives a monthly stipend for household expenses and Ella's care. After 12 months, either party can file for divorce with no contest. Caleb took the envelope without opening it. Understood. There's also this. Richard produced a second envelope, this one addressed to Caleb. First month's payment. The apartment has been prepared. Marcus will coordinate the move. We can move ourselves, Caleb started. Monday, Richard continued as if he hadn't spoken. That gives you the weekend to make arrangements. Vivian watched this exchange with growing unease. Her grandfather was many things, cold, calculating, ruthless, but he wasn't usually this efficient. It felt rehearsed, like everyone had scripts except her. I need to speak with my wife, Vivian said, the word wife foreign on her tongue. Alone. Richard's eyebrow lifted. There's a room outside. She didn't wait for agreement, just walked out into the hallway. After a moment, Caleb followed, leaving Ella with Richard and the judge. The hallway was empty, echoing. Vivian turned on him. What did he offer you? Caleb's expression didn't change. I'm sorry? My grandfather doesn't do charity, so what did he offer you? Money? Connections? A way out of whatever trouble you're in? He offered me safety. The answer was so direct it caught her off guard. For my daughter. From what? That's not part of our agreement. He said it gently, but there was steel underneath. You don't ask about my past. I don't interfere with your business. We maintain appearances for 1 year, then we're done. And you're just fine with that? Living in my home, taking my money, pretending to be my husband? Something flickered across his face. Ms. Hart, it's Vivian. If we're married, you should probably use my first name. Vivian. He said it carefully, like testing unfamiliar territory. I understand this isn't what you wanted. It's not what I wanted either, but we're both here because the alternative is worse. So I suggest we make this as painless as possible. I'll stay out of your way. You'll barely know I'm there. You're moving into my penthouse with a 6-year-old who goes to bed at 8 and knows how to be quiet. He stepped closer, and Vivian caught a scent that was all wrong for this sterile hallway. Motor oil and cedar, like he'd walked out of a workshop instead of a wedding. I'm not here to disrupt your life. I'm here to protect mine. From what? She asked again. This time he didn't answer, just looked at her with eyes that had seen things her quarterly reports couldn't quantify. The door opened. Richard appeared, Ella's hand in his. The car's waiting. The penthouse had been transformed. Vivian stood in her own living room Monday evening and barely recognized it. Her pristine, minimalist space, all white surfaces and chrome accents, now featured colorful storage bins, a child-sized table with crayons, and what appeared to be a stuffed elephant the size of a golden retriever. "What," she said slowly, "is that?" Marcus appeared from the hallway, tablet in hand. "That's Mr. Snuffles. Apparently he's essential. He looks like he has rabies. I'll make a note." Marcus didn't look up from his screen. "Mr. Rowan and Ella are settling into the East Wing. I've arranged for a nanny to start tomorrow. I can take care of my own daughter." Caleb emerged from the hallway, carrying a box labeled Ella's Books. He'd changed into jeans and a faded MIT t-shirt that answered at least one of Vivian's questions. The shirt fit him like it had been worn 1,000 times. "We don't need a nanny," he continued, setting the box down. "Ella's in first grade. I'll handle pickup and drop-off." "The school is in Brooklyn," Vivian said. "You're living on the Upper East Side now." "Then I'll commute." "That's ridiculous, Ms. Hart." He said it quietly, but the formality was deliberate. A reminder that for all their legal binding, they were strangers. "I appreciate the thought, but Ella's routine matters. Consistency matters. I'm not outsourcing her care because the zip code changed." Vivian opened her mouth to argue, then caught Marcus's subtle head shake. "Pick your battles." "Fine, but the nanny stays. For emergencies." "Agreed." Caleb picked up the box again. "I'll be out of your way in an hour." After he disappeared back into the East Wing, Marcus leaned in. "He's not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone more," Marcus gestured vaguely. "Grateful? Overwhelmed? This guy acts like moving into a $12 million penthouse is just another Tuesday." Vivian thought about that MIT shirt, the careful way Caleb spoke, the gaps in his employment record. "Run the background check again. Everything from the moment he left college." "Already did. Came back the same. He's a ghost for 3 years." "Then find out why." The first week was a study in forced cohabitation. Vivian left for the office at 6 a.m., returned around 9 p.m., and mostly encountered evidence of her new roommates rather than the roommates themselves. Ella's artwork on the fridge, Caleb's coffee mug in the sink. He drank it black, she noted, and apparently went through 4 cups before breakfast. A stuffed bear on the couch. Children's laughter from behind closed doors. She'd expected chaos. Instead, she got silence. They stayed in their wing, she stayed in hers, like neighboring countries with a demilitarized zone made of marble tile. On Friday, Vivian came home early, crisis averted in London, meetings canceled, and found Caleb in her kitchen. Not just in the kitchen, cooking. "What are you doing?" The question came out sharper than intended. Caleb looked up from where he was doing something complicated with a wok. "Making dinner." Ella requested orange chicken. "I have a chef who comes 3 times a week. It's Friday. He's not scheduled." Caleb returned his attention to the stove. "There's enough if you want some." Vivian couldn't remember the last time someone had cooked for her. Business dinners, catered events, takeout consumed at her desk. Yes. Actual home cooking? Not since her mother. "I have work to do. Suit yourself." He added something that sizzled violently. The smell was incredible. "Ella, set an extra place just in case." The little girl appeared from the living room carrying plates that were probably worth more than most people's monthly rent. She approached Vivian cautiously, like approaching a skittish animal. "Do you like orange chicken?" "I don't know," Vivian admitted. "I've never had it." Ella's eyes went wide. "Never?" "Never." "Then you have to try Daddy's. It's the best." She set a plate at the head of the table, Vivian's usual spot. "Please." Vivian looked at Caleb, who was very deliberately not looking at her, giving her an out. She could retreat to her office, maintain the boundaries they'd established, keep this arrangement purely transactional. Instead, she pulled out her chair and sat. Dinner was awkward and perfect in equal measure. Ella chattered about first grade, about a girl named Sophie who brought the best snacks, about how Mr. Snuffles didn't like the new apartment because it echoed. Caleb interjected occasionally, gentle corrections and redirections, the practiced rhythm of a single parent. The orange chicken was objectively the best thing Vivian had eaten in months. "You learned to cook at MIT?" she asked, surprising herself. Caleb's hand paused halfway to his water glass. "No. Learned from my mom. She insisted engineers needed practical skills." Smart woman. She was. Something crossed his face, there and gone. She is, Florida. The correction was clumsy, deliberately so. Vivian recognized evasion when she heard it. "Daddy makes the best grilled cheese, too," Ella announced. "Even the crusts taste good." "High praise," Vivian said dryly. "She's easily impressed." But Caleb smiled when he said it, and for the first time Vivian saw what he must have looked like before. Younger, lighter, unburdened by whatever he was running from. After dinner, Ella helped clear plates, then retreated for her bath. Vivian found herself alone in the kitchen with Caleb, who was doing dishes by hand despite the state-of-the-art dishwasher 3 feet away. "You don't have to do that," she said. Force of habit. He rinsed a plate. Small apartment in Brooklyn. Dishwasher was always broken. "This isn't Brooklyn." "No." He looked around the kitchen, the marble counters, the custom cabinetry, the view of Central Park through the windows. It's definitely not. Vivian should have left, should have retreated to her office, maintained the distance that made this arrangement bearable. Instead, she heard herself ask, "Why mechanical engineering?" "Why Wall Street?" he countered. "I asked first." He set down the plate, considering. "I like understanding how things work, how systems connect, how small changes can prevent catastrophic failures." His eyes met hers. "What about you?" "I like winning." The answer came without thought. "And Wall Street keeps score." "Does it?" Caleb's tone was neutral, but the question had weight. "Or does it just convince you the score matters?" Before Vivian could respond, Ella called from the bathroom. "Daddy? Mr. Snuffles fell in." Caleb's face transformed, exasperation and affection in equal measure. "That's the 3rd time this week." He moved toward the hallway, then paused. "Thank you for having dinner with us. It's my kitchen. It's your kindness." He said it simply, like stating a fact. Ella noticed. Then he was gone, leaving Vivian alone with dirty dishes and the uncomfortable realization that her carefully constructed walls had developed their first crack. The call came at 2 a.m. on Tuesday. Vivian jerked awake to her phone vibrating against the nightstand. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, probably spam or a wrong number, but years of emergency middle-of-the-night deals had trained her otherwise. Heart. Heavy breathing. Then a child's voice, thin with terror. "Is my daddy there?" Vivian sat bolt upright. "Ella?" "The bad men are here again," whispered, barely audible. "Daddy said to call you if—" The line went dead. Vivian was out of bed before conscious thought caught up. She yanked on clothes, grabbed her phone, and was halfway to the east wing when Caleb's door opened. He was already dressed, already moving. "Ella called me," Vivian said. "She said—" "I know, I got the alert." He brushed past her, heading for the front door with lethal focus. "Stay here." "Like hell, if someone's threatening a child in my building, this isn't about the building." Caleb spun to face her, and for the first time, Vivian saw something dangerous in his eyes. "This is about me, about mistakes I made before you, so stay here, lock the door, and if I'm not back in 30 minutes, call this number." He thrust a card at her. "Not 911, this number." Vivian looked at the card. No name, just a phone number with a DC area code. "What the hell did you do?" she demanded. "Protected my daughter." He was already moving again. 30 minutes. Then he was gone, and Vivian was left standing in her penthouse at 2 a.m., holding a mysterious phone number and realizing she'd married a complete stranger. She waited exactly 3 minutes before following. The building's security footage showed Caleb entering the service elevator, descending to the parking garage. Vivian pulled it up on her phone, perks of owning the building, and watched him move through the garage with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Not a mechanic's movements. Something else. She took the main elevator down, emerging into the garage to find it empty except for her Mercedes and Caleb's beat-up Honda. Then she heard it. Voices from the far corner near the maintenance access. Vivian moved closer, staying behind the concrete pillars. "Don't care what you think you're owed." Caleb's voice, cold as she'd never heard it. "The answer is no. Your brother disagrees." A second voice, male, with an accent Vivian couldn't place. "He says you have something that belongs to the family." "I have a daughter, that's what I have." "You have access, codes, accounts." The voice grew harder. "Information that could prove very valuable to the right buyer." "Then find another seller." Movement. Vivian risked a glance around the pillar and saw 3 men surrounding Caleb, armed, professional, not random thugs, something worse. "We tried asking nicely," the speaker continued. He was tall, scarred, military-bearing. "But you ignored messages, changed numbers, hid behind new names." He pulled out a phone, showed Caleb the screen. "Nice penthouse, pretty wife, sweet little girl." Caleb moved so fast Vivian almost missed it. One moment he was standing still. The next, the phone was on the ground and the man was against the wall, Caleb's forearm across his throat. "You stay away from them. You stay away from Ella, or I'll make sure everyone knows what happened in Prague." The man laughed, even with his air cut off. "Empty threat. You tell that story, you go down too." "I'm already down." Caleb's voice dropped to something lethal. "I've got nothing left to lose. Do you?" A standoff. The other 2 men shifted, hands moving toward weapons. Then Vivian stepped out from behind the pillar. "I wouldn't." She kept her voice level, even though her heart was trying to escape her chest. "Building security has you on 6 cameras. NYPD response time to this address is 90 seconds, and I promise you the lawyers I have on retainer will bury you so deep you'll need a team of archaeologists to find daylight." 4 sets of eyes turned to her. Caleb's face went through several expressions: surprise, anger, and something that might have been respect. The scarred man pushed Caleb away, straightening his jacket. "Ms. Hart, how nice to finally meet you." "I don't know who you are, and I don't care." Vivian pulled out her phone, made a show of opening the security app. "But you're trespassing in my building. You have 60 seconds to leave before I call the police." "This isn't your business." "He's my husband." "That makes it exactly my business." The lie came smoothly, as if this arrangement was real, as if she and Caleb were actually a team. The man studied her for a long moment, then smiled. "Interesting, very interesting." He gestured to his companions. "We'll be in touch, Rowan. Tell your wife it was a pleasure." They left. Actually, left. Vivian watched the security feed until their car exited the garage, then turned to Caleb. "Start talking." He looked at her, really looked like he was seeing her for the first time. "You shouldn't have come down here. And you shouldn't have lied to me about who you are." Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline crash incoming. "Who were those men? What did they want? And what the hell happened in Prague?" Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Did Ella call you from the penthouse phone?" The question threw her. "Yes." "Why?" "Then she's safe, and the security protocols worked." He started toward the elevator. "Come on, I'll explain upstairs." "You'll explain now, upstairs." He stopped, looked back at her. "Please, Vivian, I have to check on my daughter. Then I'll tell you everything you need to know." It wasn't everything. It was what she needed to know. The distinction mattered, but she followed him anyway. Ella was asleep in her bed, clutching Mr. Snuffles, when they checked on her. The emergency phone, a basic flip model, Vivian noticed, was on her nightstand. Caleb stood in the doorway for a full minute, just watching his daughter breathe. "She practiced the drill," he said quietly. "Every week. If you see the bad men, lock your door, call Vivian, hide in the closet. She's 6. She shouldn't have to practice that. But she does, because you're running from something." "Yes." They retreated to the living room. Caleb poured 2 glasses of whiskey. When had he learned where she kept the good stuff? And handed her one. Then he sat on the couch that probably cost more than his car and told her the truth. Some of it, anyway. My brother, he started, is not a good person. Alexander Rowan. He runs a private intelligence firm, sells information to the highest bidder. Governments, corporations, criminals. He doesn't discriminate. And you worked for him. Worse, I helped build his systems. Caleb stared into his glass. That's what I did during those missing 3 years. Design networks for moving money, hiding transactions, erasing digital footprints. I was very good at it. MIT education put to use. Yeah. He took a drink. I told myself it was just engineering, just puzzles. I didn't ask who used the systems or why, until I met Sarah, his wife. Vivian waited. She was treating a kid, 5 years old, refugee from a war zone, needed specialized care. His voice went rough. I found out later that Alexander's firm had facilitated the arms deal that leveled the kid's village. My systems, my code, helped hide the money trail. Jesus. I tried to leave. Alexander said no, said I knew too much. So I took copies of everything, every transaction, every client, every dirty secret in his files, and I ran. Changed my name, changed cities, became someone who worked with his hands instead of computers. He finally looked at her. Sarah knew. She helped me disappear. We got married, had Ella. For 4 years we were safe. Until she died. Until they killed her. The words were flat, final. Made it look like medical complications, but I know. Alexander sent a message. Run farther, or the next one's your daughter. The pieces clicked into place. That's why you agreed to marry me. Grandfather offered protection. Your grandfather, Caleb said carefully, has resources that make Alexander's network look like a lemonade stand, and he has reasons to want my brother neutralized. What reasons? That's between him and me. Caleb stood, set down his glass. I'm sorry I brought this to your door. If you want out of the arrangement, I understand. I can find another. No. He stopped. Vivian stood too, trying to ignore the fact that she was wearing pajamas and having a conversation about private intelligence firms in her living room at 3 a.m. Those men threatened Ella. They threatened me. I don't respond well to threats. Vivian, I have lawyers, Caleb. I have security. I have enough money to make problems disappear permanently. She moved closer. And right now, you and Ella are legally my problem. So if your brother wants to play games, he'd better be ready to lose. Something shifted in Caleb's expression. You don't know what you're offering. I know exactly what I'm offering. Strategic protection in exchange for... She paused. What was she getting out of this besides avoiding Derek Chen? Information. Information? You said you're good with systems, with finding patterns. Vivian made a decision. Derek Chen, the man trying to take Sterling global. I want to know everything about him. Every dirty deal, every skeleton, every vulnerability. Can you do that? Caleb studied her for a long moment, then smiled, a real smile, sharp and dangerous. Yes, I can do that. Then we have a deal. She extended her hand. Partners? He took it. His grip was warm, solid, nothing like the brief professional handshake at City Hall. Partners. Neither of them let go for a moment too long. Then Caleb stepped back, the moment broken. I should try to sleep. Ella will be up in 4 hours demanding pancakes. Does she like blueberries? He paused in the doorway. What? In her pancakes. Blueberries. Yes or no? Yes. Why? Because I'm working from home tomorrow. Vivian picked up both whiskey glasses, headed for the kitchen. And if we're doing this, actually doing this, then we should probably eat breakfast together. Appearances matter. Appearances, Caleb repeated, but he was smiling again. Right. After he left, Vivian stood at the window looking out over Central Park. Somewhere in the city, Alexander Rowan was planning his next move. Somewhere else, Derek Chen was circling Sterling Global like a shark. And here she was, standing in her penthouse at 3 a.m., having just promised to go to war for a man she'd married 11 days ago. Her grandfather was either a genius or insane. Possibly both. Vivian pulled out her phone, sent a single text to Marcus. Need everything on Alexander Rowan. Intelligence contractor ties to Prague. Flag anything connecting to Derek Chen. The response came immediately. Already on it. You okay? She looked at the two empty whiskey glasses, thought about Caleb's face when he'd talked about his daughter, remembered the cold efficiency with which he'd moved in that garage. Getting there, she typed back. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., war room. Which war? Vivienne smiled. All of them. She was 30 years old. She'd built an empire from her parents' ashes. She'd crushed competitors twice her age and 3 times as ruthless. And now she had a husband who designed systems to hide money, a daughter who practiced emergency drills, and enemies she hadn't even known existed. This was going to be interesting. Marcus arrived at 8:45 a.m. with 3 laptops, a file box, and enough coffee to fuel a small army. He took one look at Vivienne, already showered, dressed, makeup perfect despite 4 hours of sleep, and shook his head. You look terrible. I look professional. She took one of the coffees. Conference room. Now. Good morning to you too. But he was already moving, setting up his equipment on the dining table that Vivienne hadn't used for actual dining in 2 years. I pulled everything on Alexander Rowan. You're not going to like it. I already don't like it. The smell of pancakes drifted from the kitchen. Vivienne glanced over to see Caleb at the stove, Ella perched on a counter stool, both of them covered in flour. When had he gotten up? She'd been awake since 5 and hadn't heard a sound. Morning, Caleb called out, not looking away from the griddle. Coffee's fresh? Marcus raised an eyebrow. Domestic. Shut up, Vivienne muttered. 20 minutes later, they were deep in files while Caleb and Ella ate breakfast at the kitchen counter. Vivienne had insisted they start without her. Work came first, always. But she kept catching herself glancing over. Watching Caleb cut Ella's pancakes into precise squares, the way the little girl talked with her hands, syrup on her chin. Boss! Marcus snapped his fingers. Focus, Alexander Rowan. Right, the brother. Vivienne turned back to the screen. Alexander Rowan's file read like a spy thriller, written by someone with a sadistic streak. Former CIA, discharged under circumstances that were heavily redacted. Founded Meridian Intelligence Group 6 years ago. Clients included 3 governments currently under UN sanctions, 2 Fortune 500 companies with histories of labor violations, and at least 1 organization that Interpol had designated as a terrorist front. Jesus, Vivienne breathed. How is he not in prison? He's careful, very careful. Marcus pulled up a network diagram. Look at the corporate structure. 17 shell companies, accounts in 8 countries, layers upon layers of legal protection. Even if you could prove illegal activity, you'd spend 5 years just figuring out who to prosecute. Caleb built this. Some of it, yeah. Marcus glanced toward the kitchen. Your husband has skills. He's not my... Vivienne caught herself. What about Derek Chen? Any connection? That's where it gets interesting. Marcus opened a second file. Derek Chen, age 42. Made his first fortune in hostile takeovers. Lost most of it in the 2018 market crash, rebuilt through increasingly aggressive acquisition tactics. He's been after Sterling Global for 2 years. I know all this. But did you know his sister was married to Caleb? The room went quiet, except for Ella's laughter from the kitchen. Sarah Chen, Marcus continued, Derek's younger sister, estranged from the family after she married Caleb. Derek blamed Caleb for, he checked his notes, quote, corrupting her and dragging her into his criminal associations. Vivienne's mind raced. So Derek knows about Alexander, about Caleb's past, probably. And here's the fun part. Marcus pulled up a financial transaction log. 3 months ago, Meridian Intelligence Group received a consulting fee from one of Derek Chen's holding companies. $2 million. Derek hired Alexander. To do what, we don't know, but the timing is suspicious. $2 million 3 months ago. Your grandfather proposes the marriage arrangement 2 weeks later. Vivienne sat back, pieces clicking into place. Grandfather knew. He knew Derek was working with Alexander. This whole thing, the marriage, the threat to transfer shares, it wasn't about me at all. It was about putting Caleb somewhere Derek couldn't touch him, Marcus finished, and giving you the resources to fight back. That manipulative bastard. But there was admiration in her voice. Richard Sterling played chess while everyone else was playing checkers. So what's the play? Marcus asked. Vivian looked at the network diagram, the web of shell companies and hidden transactions. Then she looked at Caleb, who was now wiping syrup off Ella's face with a patience that shouldn't exist before 9 a.m. We need to know what Derek hired Alexander to do, and we need leverage. She stood, walked to the kitchen. Caleb, a word. He glanced at Ella. Can it wait 10 minutes? I need to be... Now. Something in her tone made him move. He said something quiet to Ella, who nodded and went back to her pancakes, then followed Vivian to the far end of the living room. Derek Chen hired your brother, she said without preamble. $2 million 3 months ago. What would that buy? Caleb's face went carefully blank. Depends what he wanted. Don't play dumb. You know how your brother operates. $2 million. What service? A long pause. Then, information, probably. Financial records. Communications. Blackmail material. Alexander specializes in finding things people want hidden. Things about Sterling Global. Things about you. Caleb met her eyes. Derek's been trying to take your company for 2 years. If Alexander found something, a scandal, a vulnerability, anything he could weaponize, Derek would pay well for it. Vivian's stomach dropped. And did he? Find something? I don't know. I've been out of Alexander's network for years. But he was thinking. She could see it. Although, what? Alexander's good, but he's not magic. To dig deep into Sterling Global, he'd need inside access. Someone in your company feeding him information. Marcus appeared at Vivian's elbow. We should audit everyone with executive clearance, financial records, communications, the works. That's 60 people, Vivian said. If word gets out that we're investigating our own executives, then we do it quietly. Caleb's voice was calm, analytical. You don't audit everyone. You look for patterns, unusual expense reports, unexplained absences, lifestyle changes that don't match salary. Alexander pays well, but people get sloppy. They buy new cars, take expensive vacations, make mistakes. You've done this before. I've seen it done. He glanced back at Ella, who was now coloring at the counter. I can help, if you want. Vivian looked at Marcus, who shrugged. He built the systems. Makes sense he knows how to break them. Fine, but we do this my way. No illegal access, no hacking. Wouldn't dream of it, Caleb said, but there was a ghost of a smile. And you tell me everything you find. No secrets. No secrets, he agreed. Liar, Vivian thought, but a useful liar. The next 3 days blurred into a rhythm Vivian had never experienced. Up at 5, coffee with Caleb while he made breakfast. Marcus arriving by 7 with updates. Caleb would take Ella to school, return by 9, then disappear into the guest room he'd converted into a makeshift office. Vivian worked from home. Unusual for her, but necessary, while Caleb did whatever mysterious analysis he was doing. They'd meet for lunch, compare notes, argue about methodology. You can't just eliminate someone because they seem nice, Caleb said on Wednesday, crossing a name off Vivian's suspect list. James has worked for Sterling Global for 15 years. He was my father's assistant, which makes him perfect for recruitment. Long tenure, trusted position, probably feels undervalued. Caleb pulled up a spreadsheet. Look at his expense reports. 3 trips to Miami in the last 6 months. Did Sterling Global have business in Miami? Vivian checked. No, but Alexander has a satellite office there, registered under a different name, but it's his. Caleb highlighted the dates. James flies out Friday evening, returns Sunday night. Every time he expenses a rental car, but no hotel. Maybe he has family. His family's in Oregon. I checked. Caleb looked at her. I'm not saying he's definitely dirty. I'm saying it's worth investigating. She hated that he was right. By Thursday, they'd narrowed the list to 8 suspects. Marcus was running deeper background checks, being careful not to trigger any alerts. Vivian was managing the day-to-day chaos of Sterling Global remotely, which her executive team found baffling. Are you sick? Her CFO asked during a video call. I'm working from home for a few days. Is that a problem? No, it's just, you never work from home. I do now. She ended the call before he could ask more questions. That evening, Caleb picked Ella up from school and returned to find Vivian pacing the living room, phone pressed to her ear, voice sharp enough to cut steel. I don't care if the Singapore deal is complicated. Make it work, or I'll find someone who can. She hung up, noticed Caleb and Ella watching from the doorway. What? You're scary when you're angry, Ella announced. Ella, Caleb said quietly. But she is. Her voice gets all... The girl made a slashing motion. Despite everything, Vivian almost smiled. Your father's scary too. You just don't notice because he hides it better. Daddy's not scary. He makes pancakes. Monsters make pancakes too, Vivian said. They're just polite about it. Caleb's expression suggested he couldn't tell if she was joking. We'll be out of your way in... Stay. The word came out before Vivian could stop it. I mean, I'm ordering dinner, Thai food, unless you already have plans. A pause, then, we like Thai food. Extra spicy, Ella added. Daddy can handle it, but he always cries. I don't cry. My eyes water. It's different. You cried last week. That was onions. You said it was allergies. Okay, food, Vivian interrupted, pulling out her phone. Before I regret this invitation, dinner became a thing. Not every night. Vivian still had late meetings. Caleb still maintained Ella's normal routines, but often enough that Vivian started noticing the empty penthouse on nights they weren't there. She'd lived alone for years, preferred it, but now the silence felt wrong. Friday evening, Marcus stopped by with updates and found all three of them on the living room floor, playing some card game that made no sense to Vivian but seemed to have Ella in stitches. You have to match the color or the number, Ella explained for the fourth time. It's easy. Nothing about this is easy, Vivian muttered, staring at her cards. Marcus cleared his throat. Should I come back? No, stay. Vivian set down her cards. Caleb immediately declared her move illegal and stood. What have you got? James Chen. Marcus handed her a file. James is Derek's cousin. Second cousin, technically, but family. He's been feeding information to Meridian Intelligence for 8 months. The room went cold. How sure are you? Caleb asked, still sitting on the floor, but suddenly very focused. Phone records, expense reports, and a bank account in the Caymans with deposits that match Alexander's payment schedules. Marcus looked grim. He's been copying files, email archives, financial projections, strategic plans, everything Derek would need to plan a takeover. Vivian's hands clenched. I'm going to kill him. You're going to fire him, Caleb corrected, standing. Legally and carefully. Then you're going to sue him for breach of contract and corporate espionage. After I kill him. Vivian. Caleb's voice was gentle. I know you're angry. But if you move too fast, Derek will know we found his source. Better to feed James false information, control what Derek sees. She wanted to argue, wanted to march into the office Monday and throw James out a window. But Caleb was right, which made it worse. Fine, we feed him disinformation, but I want him gone within a month. 2 weeks, Marcus suggested. Any longer and it looks suspicious. Daddy? Ella's small voice cut through the tension. Are you playing or not? The absurdity of the moment hit Vivian. Standing in her living room in yoga pants, planning corporate espionage, while a 6-year-old waited for someone to take their turn in a card game. We're playing, Caleb said, sitting back down. Vivian's turn. I already went. Illegally, draw 4 cards. That's not a rule. House rules, Ella announced solemnly. Daddy made them. Vivian looked at Marcus, who was trying not to laugh. Don't say a word. Wouldn't dream of it, boss. The weekend brought an unexpected complication. Vivian's grandmother. Catherine Sterling called Saturday morning, her voice carrying the kind of authority that made executives 3 times her age snap to attention. Dinner, tomorrow, 6 o'clock. Bring your husband. Grandmother, I'm working on 6 o'clock, Vivian, don't be late. The line went dead. Vivian stared at her phone. Well, that's going to be fun. Caleb looked up from where he was helping Ella build something elaborate with blocks. Your grandmother? She wants to meet you. Tomorrow. Dinner. His expression suggested he'd rather face Alexander's men again. I should probably know things about your family, so I don't say something stupid. Where do I start? Vivian sat on the couch thinking. Grandmother Catherine, 78, terrifying. She ran Sterling Global's European division for 20 years before retiring. Doesn't tolerate weakness, incompetence, or excuses. So she's like you, but with more practice. I'm not. Vivian caught his slight smile. Shut up. What else? She loved my parents. Blames herself for not being there when they died. She was in Paris, handling a merger. Vivian's throat tightened. She got on a plane the moment she heard, but by the time she landed, Caleb's expression softened. I'm sorry. It was 12 years ago. Doesn't matter. Loss doesn't have a statute of limitations. He said it like someone who knew, like someone who'd lost people too. Ella tugged on Caleb's sleeve. Can I come to dinner? No, sweetheart. This is grown-up dinner. But I want to meet Vivian's grandmother. And you will, just not tomorrow. Caleb glanced at Vivian. Is there a dress code? Formal. Very formal. Grandmother believes casual dining is a sign of societal collapse. I don't own a tuxedo. Then we're shopping today. Vivian stood. Marcus can watch Ella. I'm not a babysitter, Marcus protested. You're whatever I pay you to be. Ella, Marcus is going to teach you about spreadsheets. The little girl's face lit up. Really? Absolutely not, Marcus and Caleb said simultaneously. 2 hours later, Vivian found herself in a men's boutique on Fifth Avenue, watching Caleb try on formal wear with the enthusiasm of someone facing a root canal. This is ridiculous, he muttered, adjusting a bow tie. I look like a waiter. You look fine. Actually, he looked better than fine. The tuxedo fit him perfectly, emphasizing shoulders she hadn't really noticed before. When had she started noticing his shoulders? Your grandmother is going to see right through this, Caleb said, turning to examine himself in the mirror. She'll know it's fake. Then we make it real. What? Vivian stepped closer, reaching up to fix his tie. We sell it. Married couple, deeply in love, everything perfect. Can you do that? Can you? He was very still, watching her adjust the silk. You're not exactly known for emotional displays. I can fake it for one dinner. That's romantic. This isn't a romance, Caleb. It's a business arrangement. Right. His voice was flat. Business. Something had shifted in the air between them. Vivian was suddenly very aware of how close they were standing, how her hands were still on his tie, how his eyes were a darker brown than she'd realized. We should, she started. Ms. Hart, the sales associate appeared with several shirts. I have the options you requested. The moment broke. Vivian stepped back, professional distance reasserting itself. Good. We'll take the tuxedo and 3 shirts. That evening, Vivian found herself unable to focus. She tried working. There were always reports to read, deals to analyze, but kept catching herself staring at nothing, thinking about Caleb's hands on a bow tie, the way he'd looked at her in that mirror. This was a problem. She didn't do attraction, didn't do messy emotions. Her last relationship had ended 3 years ago when she'd missed her boyfriend's birthday for a merger meeting and he'd called her a soulless corporate robot. She hadn't disagreed strongly enough to fight about it. But Caleb was different. Caleb was here, in her space, cooking in her kitchen, playing cards with his daughter on her living room floor, making her penthouse feel less like an expensive tomb and more like a, no, not going there. Her phone buzzed, text from Marcus. Got something. Call when you can. She called. James isn't the only mole, Marcus said without preamble. Found 2 more. Different departments, different clearance levels, but all feeding information to Meridian. Vivian's blood went cold. Who? Sandra Yo, VP of Acquisitions, and Thomas Park, Senior Legal Counsel. Thomas has access to confidential settlement agreements, attorney-client privileged communications. Yep, and he's been copying files for 6 months. How did we miss this? Vivian was already pacing. We vet everyone, background checks, security clearances. Alexander's good at recruitment. He finds pressure points. Thomas's daughter has medical bills, Sandra's gambling debts. They both got cash infusions around the time the leaks started. So Derek knows everything, every deal, every strategy, every weakness. Vivian wanted to punch something. We're dead in the water. Not necessarily, Caleb's voice came through. Marcus had him on the line too. This is salvageable. How? You use it. Feed them information that serves your purposes. Make Derek think he's ahead when he's actually walking into a trap. What kind of trap? That depends on what you want. Destroy him? Buy him out? Force a settlement? Vivienne thought about Derek Chen, the man who'd been circling Sterling Global like a vulture, who'd hired Alexander, recruited her own employees, threatened everything her parents had built. I want him gone. Completely. No comeback, no second chances. Then we give him enough rope to hang himself, Caleb said. Feed your moles information about a major vulnerability. Make it look real. Derek takes the bait, commits resources to exploiting it. Then we reveal the whole thing was fake and he's overextended. That's incredibly risky. It's also your best shot. Derek's aggressive. He'll take any advantage he can get. Use that against him. Marcus cleared his throat. For what it's worth, I think he's right. We control the information flow now. We decide what Derek sees. Vivienne looked out her window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Derek Chen was planning Sterling Global's destruction. Her destruction. But he didn't know she'd found his sources. Didn't know Caleb was helping her. Didn't know she was done playing defense. Okay, she said, let's burn him down. Sunday dinner was exactly as awful as Vivienne had anticipated. Catherine Sterling lived in a brownstone that had been in the family for 4 generations. Original hardwood floors, priceless art collection, and a dining room that could seat 20. Tonight, it was just the 3 of them, which somehow made it worse. Grandmother Catherine appraised Caleb with the same expression she probably used for hostile acquisition targets. So, the mechanic. Yes, ma'am. Caleb's voice was respectful, but not obsequious. It's an honor to meet you. Honor. Yes. Catherine sipped her wine. Tell me, Mr. Rowan, what exactly do you do at this repair shop? Diagnostic work mostly, electrical systems, computer modules. Modern cars are basically computers with wheels. And before the repair shop? Vivienne tensed. This was dangerous territory, but Caleb didn't hesitate. I worked in aerospace engineering, guidance systems. After my wife died, I needed something simpler, less travel. I see. Catherine's eyes were sharp. And your daughter? Ella? She's 6, first grade, obsessed with elephants and apparently convinced that Vivienne's building needs a dog. Does it? No, Vivienne said firmly. Actually, Catherine said, a smile ghosting across her lips, a dog might be good for you. Teach you about caring for something other than quarterly earnings. I care about plenty of, your grandfather tells me the marriage was his idea. Catherine cut through Vivienne's protest like it was tissue paper. Rather medieval, forcing 2 strangers into a legal binding. But Richard has always been pragmatic to the point of ruthlessness. He was protecting the company, Vivienne said. Was he? Or was he protecting you? The question landed like a bomb. Catherine set down her wine glass. Did you know your grandfather had a mild heart attack 3 months ago? The room tilted. What? Kept it quiet. Doctors said stress. Wanted him to step back, reduce his involvement in Sterling Global. Catherine's eyes moved between them. Instead, he arranged a marriage, put Caleb and Ella here, in your home, made sure you had something besides work to think about. Vivienne felt like she'd been punched. He manipulated me because he's worried about my health? He manipulated you because he loves you. Catherine's voice was gentle, which was somehow worse than her usual severity. And because he knows what this family does to people. Your great-grandfather died at his desk. Your grandfather has given everything to Sterling Global. Your parents, she trailed off. Died in a plane crash, Vivienne finished. Died exhausted. Your father hadn't slept properly in weeks. The pilot reported weather concerns. Your father overruled him. Catherine's hands trembled slightly. Work comes first. It's the Sterling way. But Richard doesn't want that for you. Caleb was very quiet beside her. So the marriage, Vivienne said slowly, wasn't about Derek Chen or hostile takeovers. Oh, those are real threats. But primarily, your grandfather wanted you to have a reason to come home, to have dinner with your family instead of eating at your desk. To remember there's more to life than board meetings. The words hung in the air like an indictment. Catherine stood. I'll check on dessert. You two talk amongst yourselves. When she was gone, Vivian sat frozen, trying to process. 3 months. Grandfather had known for 3 months he was having heart problems, and instead of telling her, he'd arranged, "Breathe," Caleb said quietly. "I'm breathing." "No, you're spiraling. I can see it." His hand found hers under the table. "Your grandfather loves you. Maybe he went about it wrong, but he lied to me." Her voice cracked. "Made me think this was about the company when really he was worried I was going to work myself to death." "Are you?" Caleb's thumb traced small circles on her palm. "Working yourself to death?" Vivian thought about the last 3 years. 18-hour days, 7 days a week. She'd dated briefly, but always canceled plans when work called. Had friends, technically, but couldn't remember the last time she'd seen them. Her apartment was a place to sleep, when she bothered sleeping. "I don't know how to be anything else," she admitted. "Then maybe that's what this year is about. Figuring out who you are when you're not being Vivian Hart, CEO. "And who's that?" Caleb smiled. "Let's find out." Catherine returned with dessert, chocolate torte, Vivian's childhood favorite, and the conversation shifted to lighter topics, family history, funny stories about Vivian's parents, embarrassing childhood incidents that made Caleb laugh, and Vivian threatened her grandmother with various corporate takebacks. "You were a handful," Catherine said fondly, "stubborn from day one." "I was focused. You were 7 years old and already planning hostile takeovers of the neighborhood lemonade stands. That was strategic consolidation. You made Tommy Richards cry. He was using substandard lemons." Caleb was trying not to laugh. Catherine noticed. "You should hear about the time she tried to hostile take over her own birthday party," the older woman said. "Grandmother, please." She fired the clown. "He wasn't performing to standard." This time Caleb did laugh, full and genuine, and Vivian found herself smiling despite the humiliation. The evening ended with Catherine walking them to the door, hugging Vivian tightly. "He's good for you," she whispered. "Don't let this one go." "It's a business arrangement," Vivian said automatically. "So was your grandfather's marriage. 56 years of business." Catherine pulled back, eyes twinkling. Sometimes the best foundations are built on necessity. In the car ride home, Vivian was quiet. Caleb didn't push, just let her think. Finally, "Did you mean it? What you said about figuring out who I am?" "Yes? Even though this ends in a year?" Caleb was quiet for a moment. "Especially because it ends in a year. You have 12 months to figure out what you actually want. Not what your grandfather wants, not what the board expects. What you want." "And what if I don't know?" "Then we figure it out together." He glanced at her. "Partners, remember? Partners." It should have been a business term, but something in the way he said it felt like more. Monday morning brought chaos in the form of Derek Chen going public. Vivian was in a meeting when Marcus burst in, tablet extended. "You need to see this." The Wall Street Journal headline, "Sterling Global Succession Crisis, CEO Forced into Marriage to Prevent Hostile Takeover." Her stomach dropped. The article had everything: the marriage certificate, Richard's health issues, even quotes from anonymous sources about Vivian's desperate attempt to maintain control. It painted her as weak, manipulated, unfit for leadership. "Derek," she said flatly, "has to be. The timing's too perfect." Marcus pulled up another article. "Bloomberg's running a similar piece. CNBC wants you for an interview. The stock's down 6%. Vivian's phone was exploding with calls. Board members, investors, journalists, all wanting explanations. Caleb appeared in the doorway. "I heard." "How bad?" "Career ending," Vivian said. "Maybe company ending." "No." His voice was firm. "This is Derek making a mistake. He's forcing you to respond publicly, which means I control the narrative now." Vivian's mind was already racing. "Marcus, get me CNBC, live interview today if possible. I'm not hiding from this." "Are you sure Derek wants a public fight?" "He'll get one." She looked at Caleb. "But I'll need you there. Married couple, united front. Can you do that?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes." The interview was scheduled for 4 p.m. 3 hours to prepare, to strategize, to figure out how to spin a forced marriage into a love story the market would buy. "This is insane," Marcus muttered, pulling up talking points. This is war, Vivian corrected, and I don't lose wars. But as she looked at the headlines, at the gleeful tone of the articles tearing apart her life, she wondered if this time might be different. The CNBC studio was freezing, all harsh lights and cameras that felt like accusatory eyes. Vivian sat in the guest chair, mic clipped to her collar, watching the host shuffle notes. Beside her, Caleb looked calm in a way that seemed impossible given the circumstances. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "No." She adjusted her jacket for the third time. "But I will be." The producer counted down. 5, 4, 3. The last two silent, just fingers. We're here with Vivian Hart, CEO of Sterling Global, and her husband Caleb Rowan. The host, Jennifer something Vivian had already forgotten, smiled with practiced sympathy. "Ms. Hart, let's address the elephant in the room. The Wall Street Journal is reporting your marriage was arranged to prevent a hostile takeover. Is that true?" Vivian had rehearsed this, had practiced the corporate speak, the careful deflections. But looking at Jennifer's face, at the barely concealed eagerness for scandal, something in her snapped. "Yes," she said simply. Jennifer's eyes widened. "You're admitting—" "I'm admitting that my grandfather, who's run Sterling Global for 60 years, suggested I get married. He believed it would provide stability during a difficult period. He was probably right." "But you barely knew your husband." "I didn't know him at all." Vivian felt Caleb tense beside her. "We met 2 weeks before the wedding. My grandfather made the introduction. It was practical, not romantic." "So this is a business arrangement?" "It was." Vivian turned slightly, looked at Caleb. "And then Ella moved in. That's Caleb's daughter. She's 6, obsessed with elephants, terrible at card games, and has single-handedly destroyed my minimalist aesthetic with stuffed animals." A flicker of something crossed Jennifer's face. Confusion, maybe. This wasn't the defensive CEO she'd expected. "She sounds lovely," Jennifer said carefully, but nothing about this looks conventional," Vivian finished. "I know. Forced marriage, corporate intrigue, all very dramatic. Except, here's what the Journal didn't mention. My grandfather had a heart attack 3 months ago. Kept it quiet because that's what Sterlings do. We work until we drop. He arranged this marriage because he was terrified I'd do the same thing." Jennifer leaned forward. "He was worried about your health?" "He was worried I'd become him. 83 years old, no life outside the company, family members who barely know him." Vivian's throat tightened. "My parents died 12 years ago, plane crash. My father was exhausted, hadn't slept in weeks, but work came first. It always comes first with us." Caleb's hand found hers. On camera, deliberate. "So yes," Vivian continued, "my grandfather arranged a marriage, and yes, it was strategic, but mostly it was an old man trying to save his granddaughter from herself." The studio was dead silent. "Mr. Rowan," Jennifer said after a moment, "why did you agree to this arrangement?" Caleb's grip on Vivian's hand tightened slightly. "I'm a single father. My wife died 4 years ago. Raising a daughter alone in Brooklyn on a mechanic's salary, it's not easy. Richard Sterling offered stability, safety, a chance to give Ella the kind of life I couldn't provide on my own." "So you married for money?" "I married for my daughter." His voice went hard. "And if that makes me mercenary, fine. But I'd do anything for Ella, including marry a stranger." "And now," Jennifer pressed, "the Journal suggests this marriage is a sham, that you're living separate lives." "The Journal is wrong," Vivian interrupted. "We eat dinner together most nights. Caleb cooks. He's better at it than any restaurant I've been to. Ella does homework at our kitchen counter. Last week she tried to teach me about fractions using chocolate chips." "How'd that go?" "I ate most of the teaching materials." Vivian felt herself almost smile. She was not impressed. Jennifer was off balance now, searching for the scandal that was supposed to be there. But surely, running a major corporation while maintaining a family life is difficult. "Yes, I'm not going to pretend otherwise." Vivian looked directly at the camera. 3 weeks ago, I worked 80-hour weeks. Hadn't taken a vacation in 5 years. Ate dinner at my desk more often than at a table. I was successful and miserable and too driven to notice the difference. And now? Now I leave work at 8 so I can help with bedtime stories. I've learned that orange chicken is apparently an acceptable dinner food. I've discovered that 6-year-olds ask approximately 8,000 questions per hour, and most of them don't have good answers. She paused. And I've realized that maybe my grandfather was right. Maybe there's more to life than quarterly earnings. Caleb squeezed her hand again. Support, or maybe surprise. She was going off script, saying things they hadn't rehearsed. Derek Chen, the investor who's been trying to acquire Sterling Global, called this marriage a desperate ploy by a failing CEO. Jennifer read from her notes. Your response? Derek Chen is a corporate raider who's made a career out of gutting companies and selling them for parts. He's been after Sterling Global for 2 years. My marriage doesn't change the fact that under my leadership, we've tripled our market value and expanded into 6 new territories. If that's failing, I'd hate to see success. He also suggests you're not fit to lead. Because I got married, or because I'm a woman? Vivian's voice went sharp. Let's be clear about what this is. Derek sees an opportunity. Young female CEO, unconventional marriage. He thinks he can undermine my authority and swoop in. He's wrong. Strong words. True words. Vivian leaned forward. Sterling Global has survived wars, recessions, and market crashes. We'll survive Derek Chen. The interview lasted another 10 minutes, but Vivian knew the damage was done. Or rather, the narrative was shifted. Not a desperate CEO forced into marriage, but a woman trying to balance an impossible situation. Human, relatable. When they finally left the studio, Marcus was waiting in the car, tablet already up. Stock's recovering, he said without preamble. Up 3% since the interview started. Social media is going crazy, mostly positive. Several board members have already called to express support. And Derek? Vivian asked. Radio silence. But I'm guessing he's furious. Good. She leaned back against the seat, suddenly exhausted. Let him be furious. Caleb was quiet beside her. Too quiet. What? She asked. Nothing. That's not nothing. What? He turned to look at her. You meant it. What you said about Ella, about dinner, about learning there's more to life than work. I was selling a narrative. No. His voice was firm. You weren't. I've watched you sell things, Vivian. That wasn't it. She wanted to argue, wanted to retreat behind corporate walls and maintain professional distance. But looking at his face, she found she couldn't. Maybe I meant some of it, she admitted. Which parts? The chocolate chip fractions were real. She really did yell at me for eating the supplies. Caleb smiled despite himself. She takes math very seriously. I noticed. Vivian looked out the window at the city passing by. Also the part about your cooking being better than restaurants. That was real too. High praise from someone who probably eats at Michelin-starred places. I eat at my desk, from containers, usually cold. She caught his expression. What? That's depressing. That's efficiency. That's sad, he corrected gently. When was the last time you actually enjoyed a meal? Vivian thought about it, really thought. I don't remember. Then we're fixing that tonight. I'm making coq au vin. I have a meeting. Cancel it. I can't just... Yes, you can. The world won't end if you leave work at 6. He was looking at her with that expression again, the one that suggested he saw past all her carefully constructed armor. Unless you're scared. Scared of what? Of admitting you might actually enjoy spending time with us. The challenge hung in the air between them. Vivian could make an excuse, retreat to her office, maintain the boundaries that kept this arrangement safely transactional. Or she could, fine, she heard herself say. 6 o'clock. But if this coq au vin isn't spectacular, I'm ordering Thai food. Deal. Marcus was very carefully not smiling in the front seat. That evening, Vivian came home at 6:15, unheard of on a Monday, to find Caleb in the kitchen, Ella doing homework at the counter, and the smell of something incredible filling the apartment. You're late, Caleb said without looking up from the stove. 15 minutes, that barely counts. Dinner's at 6:30. You need to change. Change into what? Something you don't mind getting wine stains on. Ella's helping with sauce and her track record is questionable. The little girl looked up from her math worksheet. I only spilled it twice. Today, Caleb added. Twice today. Vivian found herself smiling despite everything. I'll find something spillable. 20 minutes later, she was back in jeans and an old Harvard sweatshirt, feeling simultaneously underdressed and more comfortable than she had in weeks. Caleb handed her a glass of red wine. Your job is sauce stirring. Follow Ella's instructions exactly. She's very particular. I'm the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, and she's the sauce boss. Kitchen hierarchy is different. He moved to start on vegetables, leaving Vivian at the stove with a 6-year-old supervisor. Okay, Ella announced seriously. You have to stir clockwise. Not too fast or it splashes. Not too slow or it burns. That's very specific. Daddy says cooking is like science. You have to follow rules. Vivian stirred carefully, watched Ella's critical expression. How's this? Good, but more even. Like this. The girl demonstrated with her hands. Swirly. Swirly. Got it. They worked like that for 20 minutes, Ella directing, Vivian following orders for possibly the first time in a decade. It should have been frustrating. Instead, it was oddly peaceful. My friend Sophie says you're famous, Ella said suddenly. I'm not famous, I'm just... She saw you on TV with her mom. They said you're really important. Vivian glanced at Caleb, who was very focused on chopping carrots. I run a company. That sometimes means being on TV. Do you like it? Being important? The question was so direct, so honestly curious, that Vivian actually stopped stirring. I don't know. I never really thought about whether I like it. That's sad, Ella announced, echoing her father from earlier. Why is everyone calling my life sad today? Because you don't know if you like your job, the girl explained with 6-year-old logic. Daddy likes fixing cars. I like elephants and math. You should like something. I like winning. Ella considered this. Is winning fun? It's satisfying. But is it fun? Vivian looked at this small person with her serious eyes and earnest expression and realized she didn't have a good answer. When was the last time she'd had actual fun? Not satisfaction from closing a deal, not the rush of crushing a competitor, actual, genuine fun. I don't know, she admitted. Ella patted her arm with sauce-covered fingers. That's okay, we'll teach you. After dinner, which was, objectively, the best meal Vivian had eaten in years, Caleb insisted on teaching her a card game that made even less sense than the previous one. Something about wild cards and reversals and rules that seemed to change based on Ella's mood. That's cheating, Vivian protested when Ella suddenly declared all red cards were worth double. It's not cheating, it's house rules, the girl explained. You can't just make up rules. Sure you can, Caleb said, playing a card that somehow made Vivian draw 6 more. Where do you think rules come from? Logical frameworks designed to ensure fair... Boring, Ella interrupted. Play your card. Vivian played, lost spectacularly, found herself laughing anyway. Later, after Ella was in bed, Vivian found Caleb on the terrace. The penthouse had a small outdoor space she rarely used, too busy, too focused on work. But tonight the air was clear and the city lights spread out like stars. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? The interview, backing me up. You didn't have to do that. We're partners, remember? He was leaning against the railing, looking out at Manhattan. Besides, you were right. Derek needed to see we're united. Were you pretending during the interview? The question came out before she could stop it. Caleb turned to look at her. Which part? Any of it. All of it. Vivian moved closer. When you held my hand, when you talked about Ella, was that performance? Some of it was performance, he admitted. The part about marrying for my daughter, that was real. Everything I said about wanting to give her a better life, that's true. And the rest? He was quiet for a long moment. The rest is complicated. Try me. 3 weeks ago, this was a business arrangement. 12 months? Then we're done. Clean, simple, transactional. He turned to face her fully. But then you had dinner with us. Then you asked Ella about fractions. Then you came home early today, even though you obviously had work, and you let a 6-year-old boss you around in the kitchen, and you laughed when she cheated at cards. She did cheat. She always cheats. It's part of her strategy. He smiled, but it faded quickly. My point is, this stopped being simple about 2 weeks ago. Vivian's heart was doing something complicated in her chest. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't know anymore. What's real? What's performance? Where the line is? He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I'm saying every time I watch you with Ella, I forget this has an expiration date. And that's dangerous. Because in 9 months, this ends. You file for divorce, we move out, you go back to your 80-hour weeks, and I go back to Brooklyn. That was the deal. And if the deal changes? The question hung between them like a held breath. Does it? Caleb asked quietly. Change? Vivian opened her mouth to answer, but her phone buzzed. Marcus. She almost ignored it, but CEO instincts kicked in. I know. Caleb stepped back, professional distance reasserting. Take it. She answered. What is it? Turn on the news. Any channel. Now. Vivian grabbed the remote, found CNN. The headline made her blood freeze. Breaking, Sterling Global VP Sandra Yo arrested for corporate espionage. What the hell? Vivian turned up the volume. The reporter was standing outside FBI headquarters. Taken into custody this evening after a months-long investigation into the theft of proprietary information. Sources say Yo was selling confidential Sterling Global documents to multiple parties, including rival corporations and foreign entities. Caleb appeared at her shoulder. That's one of your moles. I didn't. Marcus, did you? Not me, Marcus said through the phone. This is federal. Someone else has been investigating, the reporter continued. Also arrested tonight, Thomas Park, senior legal counsel at Sterling Global, and James Chen, executive assistant to CEO Vivian Hart. All three are being charged with corporate espionage, wire fraud, and conspiracy. 3 arrests simultaneously, Caleb said. That's not random. Someone coordinated this. Vivian's mind was racing. Grandfather. What? He knew. He knew about the moles, probably before we did. He's been building a case. She grabbed her jacket. I need to get to the office. It's 10 p.m. I don't care. My entire executive team just got arrested on national television. I need to... Her phone rang again. Unknown number. Ms. Hart? A voice she didn't recognize, professional, clipped. This is Agent Morrison, FBI. We need you to come to Federal Plaza for questioning. Vivian's stomach dropped. Am I being arrested? Not at this time. But we have questions about your company's security protocols and employee vetting procedures. A car is being sent to your location. I want my lawyer present. Of course, bring whoever you need. We'll be waiting. The line went dead. Vivian looked at Caleb. I have to go. I'm coming with you. You don't have to. I'm coming, he repeated. Partner, remember? 20 minutes later, they were in a federal interrogation room that smelled like stale coffee and anxiety. Vivian's lawyer, Patricia Chen, no relation to Derek, thankfully, sat beside her, expensive suit and sharper expression. Agent Morrison was 50-something, gray hair, eyes that had seen too much. Ms. Hart, how long have you known about the information leaks? About a week, Vivian said. Patricia had coached her in the car. Tell the truth, but only what they ask. And you didn't report them? I was gathering evidence, building a case, instead of alerting authorities. Morrison pulled out a file. That's obstruction. That's due diligence, Patricia interrupted smoothly. My client discovered suspicious activity and began investigating. She was preparing to file a formal report when your arrest preempted the process. Morrison's expression suggested he didn't buy it. Convenient timing. What do you want to know, Agent? Vivian asked directly. I'll answer whatever I can. The next 2 hours were brutal. Questions about Sterling Global security, about her relationship with the arrested executives, about whether she'd noticed any suspicious behavior. Vivian answered carefully, truthfully, aware that every word was being recorded. Finally, Morrison leaned back. One more question. What's your connection to Alexander Rowan? The room temperature dropped about 20 degrees. I don't know anyone by that name, Vivian said carefully. Really? Because your husband's brother runs a private intelligence firm that we believe facilitated these leaks. You're telling me you know nothing about that? Vivian looked at Caleb, who'd been silent this entire time. His face was unreadable. My husband's family history isn't relevant to Sterling Global's operations, she said, but it's very relevant to this investigation. Morrison pulled out another file. Meridian Intelligence Group, run by Alexander Rowan. We've been investigating them for 3 years. Money laundering, corporate espionage, potentially worse, and your employees were feeding him information. I didn't know that until last week. But your husband did. Morrison's eyes shifted to Caleb. Didn't you, Mr. Rowan? I suspected, Caleb said quietly. Based on the patterns Vivian described, my brother has a specific methodology. And you didn't think to mention this earlier? Maybe when your wife's company was being systematically robbed? I mentioned it to Vivian as soon as I was certain we were building a case. Or you were covering for your brother. My brother, Caleb said, voice going cold, killed my wife. If you think I'm protecting him, you don't know anything about our relationship. That brought Morrison up short. Killed? Made it look like medical complications. But yeah, 4 years ago. I've been running from him ever since. And you married into one of the wealthiest families in New York. I married because Richard Sterling offered protection for my daughter, because hiding in plain sight seemed safer than staying in Brooklyn waiting for Alexander to finish what he started. Morrison studied him for a long moment, then turned to Vivian. You know what this looks like, right? Mechanic with a criminal brother marries a billionaire CEO right before her company gets hit with espionage charges. Looks like a setup. Or, Patricia interjected icily, it looks like a widowed father trying to protect his child, and a CEO dealing with employees who betrayed her trust, neither of which is illegal. Conspiracy to obstruct? You have no evidence my client obstructed anything. She discovered leaks, investigated them, and was preparing to report when you made arrests. If anything, your investigation benefited from her work. Morrison looked between them. Vivian held his gaze, refusing to flinch. You're free to go, he finally said. But don't leave town. We may have more questions. In the car ride back, Vivian was silent, processing. 3 executives arrested, federal investigation, her husband's brother at the center of everything. I'm sorry, Caleb said quietly. For what? Bringing this into your life. Alexander, the investigation, all of it. You were right to be angry in the garage. I should have told you everything from the start. Would it have changed anything? He thought about it. Probably not, but at least you wouldn't have been blindsided. Vivian looked out the window. It was past midnight now, the city still alive with lights and movement. Morrison was wrong. This isn't a setup. I know. But he's not the only one who'll think it. Derek will use this. The board, the investors, they'll all question whether I knew, whether I was involved. Then we prove you weren't. How? Caleb turned to look at her. We expose everything. Alexander's operation, Derek's involvement, the whole network. Burn it all down so thoroughly that no one can question your integrity. That's ambitious. That's necessary. His jaw set. I've been running from my brother for 4 years, hiding, changing names, trying to protect Ella by staying invisible. But maybe that was the wrong strategy. Maybe it's time to fight back. You understand what that means? Going after Alexander directly? Yes. He'll come after you. After Ella. He's already coming after us. At least this way we see him coming. Vivian thought about the last 3 weeks. The marriage, the lies, the careful dance of pretending to be something they weren't. And underneath it all, actual moments of connection. Real conversations, genuine laughter, the slow breakdown of walls she'd built so carefully. Okay, she said, but we do this smart. No more secrets, no more half-truths. You tell me everything about Alexander's operation. Everything. Deal. But you do the same. About Sterling Global, about Derek, about anything that could be used against you. That's a long list. I've got time. When they got back to the penthouse, it was nearly 2 a.m. The nanny, a stern woman named Rosa, who'd appeared 3 weeks ago and somehow made herself indispensable, reported that Ella had gone to bed without fuss. She asked about you, Rosa said to Caleb. Worried. I told her grown-up business, nothing to worry about. Thank you. He disappeared to check on his daughter, leaving Vivian alone with Rosa's knowing look. What? Vivian asked. Nothing, Ms. Hart. But Rosa smiled as she gathered her things. Just nice to see this place feeling like a home. After she left, Vivian stood in the living room looking at the evidence of habitation. Ella's drawings on the fridge, Caleb's coffee mug in the sink, a stuffed elephant on the couch. 3 weeks ago, this would have driven her crazy. Now, the thought of going back to pristine emptiness felt wrong. Caleb emerged from Ella's room, closing the door quietly. She's asleep. Didn't even wake up. Good. They stood there, exhausted and wired at the same time, the events of the day weighing heavy. I should let you sleep, Caleb said finally. Wait. Vivian moved closer. Earlier, on the terrace, I was about to answer your question before Marcus called. About whether the deal changes? Yeah. She took a breath. I don't know if it changes. I don't know what this is or where it's going, but I know that 3 weeks ago, I came home to an empty apartment and ate takeout at my desk and told myself I was happy. And now I come home to dinner and card games and a 6-year-old who thinks I need to learn about fun. And you're right, it's not simple anymore. It's messy and complicated and probably a terrible idea. But, Caleb prompted, but I'm tired of simple. Simple is lonely. Simple is eating cold Chinese food at midnight and working myself to death because there's nothing else. She looked at him. So maybe the deal doesn't change officially. Maybe we still file for divorce in 9 months. But until then, can we stop pretending this is just business? The question hung between them for a moment. Then Caleb smiled. A real smile, warm and genuine. Yeah, he said softly. We can stop pretending. He kissed her then, gentle and tentative, like testing unfamiliar territory. Vivian kissed back, her hands finding his shoulders, his finding her waist. It was nothing like the perfunctory kiss at City Hall. This was real, wanted. When they pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Caleb rested his forehead against hers. This is still a terrible idea, he murmured. Probably. 9 months. Then this ends. Maybe, Vivian said, or maybe not. Let's find out. The next morning brought fresh chaos in the form of Derek Chen calling an emergency board meeting. Vivian got the notification at 6 a.m. while she was making coffee in pajamas, still half asleep from 4 hours of rest. He can't call an emergency meeting, she told Marcus over the phone. He's not on the board. He's citing the morality clause in the company charter, claims your judgment is compromised by the arrests and your relationship with Caleb. My relationship? What? Someone leaked photos from last night. You and Caleb leaving FBI headquarters together. Headlines are calling it a crisis of leadership. Vivian wanted to throw something. Instead, she very calmly set down her coffee. When's the meeting? Noon, corporate headquarters. I'll be there at 11. We're ending this today. Caleb appeared in the kitchen, already dressed. I heard. What do you need? Everything you have on Alexander's operation. Client lists, transaction records, anything that ties him to Derek. That's not enough. Derek will claim he was a victim too, that he didn't know Alexander was dirty. Then what? Caleb pulled out his phone, made a call. Yeah, it's me. I need the Prague files. Everything. He listened for a moment. I don't care if it's risky. Send them now. He hung up, looked at Vivian. I have a friend, someone who worked with Alexander and got out. He's been holding insurance, records of every illegal operation Alexander ran, including Prague. Prague. The thing you threatened that guy with in the garage. Yeah. Alexander brokered an arms deal that violated about 6 international treaties, made $20 million in fees, funneled it through shell companies. The whole thing is documented. He sat down, started pulling up files on his laptop. If we release this, it destroys Alexander. But it also means admitting I was involved, that I helped build the systems that made it possible. Vivian understood what he was offering. His reputation, possibly his freedom, in exchange for taking down his brother. You don't have to do this, she said. Yes, I do, for Ella, so she doesn't spend her life running. He looked up at her. And for you, because Derek's using my family to attack you, and I'm not letting that stand. The files arrived an hour later. Vivian and Marcus went through them with growing horror and grudging admiration. Alexander Rowan was meticulous. Every transaction documented, every client cataloged, every illegal operation recorded with the kind of detail that would make prosecutors weep with joy. This is enough to put him away for 20 years, Marcus breathed. Maybe more. It's also enough to implicate Caleb, Vivian pointed out. His name is on half these systems. But with immunity deals, witness protection, no protection, Caleb interrupted. I'm not hiding anymore. We release everything. I cooperate with authorities. I take whatever consequences come. But we do it today, before the board meeting, before Derek can use this against Vivian. That's insane, Marcus said. That's the only way forward. Vivian looked at the files, then at Caleb. If we do this, your life changes. Ella's life changes. She'll know what you did, what you were involved in. She'll know I made mistakes and tried to fix them. That's a better lesson than hiding. He stood, moved to Vivian. But I won't do it if you're not comfortable. This is your company, your reputation. You get final say. She thought about those last 3 weeks. The careful lies, the strategic marriage, the walls slowly coming down. Thought about Ella asking if winning was fun, about Caleb teaching her that rules could change, about coming home to something other than empty perfection. Release everything, she said. But we do it smart. Press conference, full disclosure, complete transparency. We control the narrative. Marcus was already on his phone. I can have reporters here in 2 hours. Make it one. And call Agent Morrison. Tell him we're cooperating fully and have evidence relevant to his investigation. The press conference was chaos barely contained. Vivian stood at a podium in Sterling Global's main conference room, cameras everywhere, reporters shouting questions. Beside her, Caleb looked calm in a way that had to be performance. Marcus was in the back, making sure everything was recorded. Thank you for coming, Vivian started. I'm going to make a statement, then we'll take limited questions. 3 weeks ago, I married Caleb Rowan in what many have called a business arrangement. They're not wrong. My grandfather proposed the marriage as a way to provide stability during a difficult period for Sterling Global. But what started as a transaction became something more complicated. She glanced at Caleb, who nodded slightly. Last night, 3 of my executives were arrested for corporate espionage. They were feeding confidential information to Meridian Intelligence Group, run by Alexander Rowan, my husband's brother. This morning, we're releasing complete documentation of Meridian's operations, including evidence of illegal activities spanning 6 years. Caleb worked for his brother during this period and helped build the systems that enabled these crimes. He's cooperating fully with federal investigators and accepting responsibility for his involvement. The room erupted. Questions flying, cameras flashing. Vivian raised her hand for silence. I know this looks bad. CEO marries someone with criminal connections right before espionage charges surface. But here's what actually happened. Richard Sterling knew about Meridian's operations. He knew Derek Chen had hired them to attack Sterling Global. He arranged my marriage to Caleb not just to protect the company, but to protect both of us. Caleb needed somewhere his brother couldn't reach him. I needed someone who understood Alexander's methodology well enough to help me fight back. So you used each other, a reporter called out. Yes, Vivian said simply. And then we stopped using each other and started actually helping each other. Messy, unconventional, probably a terrible idea, but effective. Another reporter stood. Mr. Rowan, are you expecting charges? Caleb stepped forward. I'm expecting consequences. I did things I'm not proud of. I helped facilitate transactions that hurt people. My wife's death was a wake-up call, but I still spent 4 years running instead of facing what I'd done. That ends today. I'm cooperating with the FBI, providing full documentation, and accepting whatever legal consequences follow. And your daughter? Someone asked. How does this affect her? For the first time, Caleb's composure cracked slightly. Ella is 6. She's innocent in all this. My mistakes shouldn't define her future, which is why I'm doing this publicly. Better she learns from my honesty now than my cowardice later. Vivian took over again. The documentation we're releasing also shows that Derek Chen paid Meridian Intelligence $2 million 3 months ago. We believe this payment was for information about Sterling Global's vulnerabilities. Derek has been using my marriage to Caleb as a weapon, claiming it shows poor judgment. Instead, it shows that when Richard Sterling makes a strategic decision, he plays 3-dimensional chess while everyone else is playing checkers. Are you saying your grandfather orchestrated all of this? A reporter from Bloomberg asked. I'm saying my grandfather protected his family and his company using the resources available to him, including a son-in-law who happened to have insider knowledge of our enemy's operations. The questions continued for another hour. Some hostile, some curious, all designed to find the scandal underneath. But Vivian held firm, Caleb stayed calm, and Marcus fed them information as needed. Finally, Vivian wrapped it up. We have a board meeting at noon. Derek Chen has called for my removal as CEO, citing this situation as evidence of compromised judgment. I'm going to that meeting, I'm going to present the facts, and I'm going to let the board decide. Questions can be directed to our press office. Thank you. She stepped away from the podium, Caleb beside her. The cameras kept flashing as they left. In the elevator, Caleb let out a long breath. Well, that was terrifying, Vivian supplied. I was going to say liberating, but terrifying works too. Her phone was exploding with messages, board members, investors, journalists. She ignored them all. Whatever happens in this meeting, she said quietly, thank you for being honest, for putting Ella first, for... The elevator lurched to a stop. Not at their floor. Emergency stop. Caleb's hand went to his pocket, a weapon Vivian hadn't known he carried. Stay behind me. The doors opened. Not to Sterling Global's lobby, to the parking garage. Alexander Rowan stood there, flanked by two men Vivian recognized from that night weeks ago. His smile was cold. Hello, little brother. We need to talk. Vivian felt Caleb's hand push her back, positioning himself between her and Alexander. The weapon, a compact pistol she hadn't even noticed him carrying, stayed in his pocket, but his hand was on it. How did you override the elevator? Caleb's voice was eerily calm. Alexander smiled. He looked like Caleb might in 20 years, same dark hair graying at the temples, same strong jaw, but where Caleb's eyes held warmth, Alexander's were glacial. I have people everywhere, little brother. You should know that by now. Security systems are remarkably easy to manipulate when you pay the right person. Building security didn't stop this? Vivian asked, already reaching for her phone. I wouldn't. One of Alexander's men raised his jacket slightly, showing a holster. We just want to talk. No one needs to get hurt. Funny, Caleb said. That's what you said before Sarah died. Alexander's expression flickered. Sarah was an accident. Sarah was a message. Caleb's voice went hard. You killed her because I wouldn't come back, because I took your files and disappeared. You stole proprietary information. I stole evidence of your crimes. There's a difference. Alexander stepped into the elevator, his men flanking the doors. The space suddenly felt very small. You just broadcast those crimes to every news outlet in the country. Do you have any idea what you've done? Ended your operation, destroyed your network, given federal prosecutors enough evidence to put you away for decades. Caleb's hand tightened on the concealed weapon. What did you think would happen? I thought you were smarter than this. I thought you understood that mutually assured destruction only works if both parties have something to lose. Alexander's eyes shifted to Vivian. Hello, Ms. Hart. Or is it Mrs. Rowan now? I can never keep track of these modern arrangements. You're trespassing in my building, Vivian said coldly. You have 30 seconds before I call the police. The police are already downstairs, buildings surrounded. Agent Morrison is very interested in talking to me, I'm sure. Alexander smiled. But first, I wanted to have a family conversation, brother to brother, before everything falls apart. We're not family, Caleb said. We're blood. That makes us family whether you like it or not. Alexander pulled out his phone, showed them the screen. I have men watching Ella's school. Very nice place, by the way. Excellent security. Not perfect, though. Nothing ever is. Vivian felt Caleb go absolutely still beside her. Dangerous still. You touch my daughter. I don't want to touch your daughter. I want you to understand the stakes. Alexander pocketed his phone. You release those files, fine, but you don't have everything. You don't have the client list from the last 2 years, the accounts in Luxembourg, the operations that are still running. I can give you all of that, complete documentation, enough to dismantle the entire network. In exchange for what? Immunity for me, witness protection, new identity. I disappear, you never see me again, and Ella grows up safe. Caleb laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want me to help you escape consequences for killing my wife. I want you to be pragmatic. The FBI doesn't have enough to convict me. Good lawyers, offshore accounts, layers of legal protection. I walk away from this. But if I cooperate, if I give them everything, we can both win. You get justice, I get freedom, Ella gets safety. That's not justice. That's you gaming the system again. That's how the system works, Alexander countered. You know that. You built half of it. Vivian watched this exchange, mind racing. Alexander was right about one thing. Men like him rarely faced real consequences. Too rich, too connected, too careful. He'd spend a few years fighting charges, probably win on technicalities, and be back in business within a decade. Unless... What about Derek Chen? She asked suddenly. Alexander's attention shifted to her. What about him? You took his money. $2 million for intelligence about Sterling Global. What did you give him? That's client confidentiality. You just offered to expose all your clients in exchange for immunity. So what did Derek get for his $2 million? A pause. Then Alexander smiled. Everything. Financial projections, strategic plans, board meeting minutes, settlement agreements. Even some personal information about you, Ms. Hart. Derek's been building a case that you're unfit to run Sterling Global. Unstable, compromised judgment, dangerous associations. With the right pressure, he thinks he can force you out and take control. And you're telling me this because? Because Derek Chen is also the reason Sarah died. The elevator went very quiet. Explain, Caleb said, his voice barely above a whisper. Alexander leaned against the elevator wall. 4 years ago, Derek hired me for a different job. He wanted information on you, Caleb. Wanted to know why his sister married a mechanic instead of someone from their social circle. I did the research, found out about your real background, your work with Meridian. Derek was furious. Thought you'd corrupted Sarah, dragged her into criminal associations. I left Meridian before I met her. He didn't care about timing. He wanted revenge. He came to me, offered money to make your life difficult, suggested perhaps Sarah should have an accident, something that would teach you a lesson about taking things that didn't belong to you. Vivian felt sick. You're saying Derek ordered the hit. I'm saying Derek made suggestions, and I interpreted them in a way that served my purposes. Sarah was helping you hide. She knew too much about Meridian's operations. She was a liability. Alexander's voice was a matter of fact, like discussing a business transaction. But Derek provided the motivation and the initial funding. So yes, her death is on both of us. Caleb moved so fast, Vivian barely tracked it. One moment he was standing still. The next, Alexander was against the wall, Caleb's forearm across his throat, the pistol pressed under his brother's jaw. Give me one reason not to pull this trigger. Because you're being recorded, Alexander choked out. Building security, remember? Every camera is watching. You shoot me, you go to prison. Ella grows up without a father. Ella grows up without a monster in her life. She grows up wondering if she'll become like you, like me, if violence runs in the family. Alexander's eyes were watering, but his voice stayed steady. That's the thing about killing family, Caleb. It marks you, marks her. You really want that? For a long moment, no one moved. Vivian could see the calculation in Caleb's eyes, the war between rage and reason. Then he stepped back, lowering the weapon. You're going to give the FBI everything, every file, every client, every operation, including Derek's involvement in Sarah's death. And in exchange, I don't kill you right now. That's the exchange. Alexander straightened his jacket, rubbing his throat. Fair enough. He looked at Vivian. You should know, Derek has one more play. Something he's been saving for the board meeting. I don't know what it is. He kept that information separate, but it's big enough that he thinks it'll destroy you. Then I guess we'll find out at noon, Vivian said. Alexander nodded to his men, who stepped back from the elevator doors. FBI's waiting downstairs. Agent Morrison is probably getting impatient. He looked at Caleb one more time. For what it's worth, I am sorry about Sarah. She was good for you. Better than you deserved. Get out, Caleb said. Alexander left. The elevator doors closed, and it started moving again, heading up to Sterling Global's executive floor. Vivian waited until they were alone before speaking. Are you okay? No. Caleb was staring at the doors, weapon still in his hand. But I will be, eventually. You didn't shoot him. Ella needs a father more than I need revenge. He finally looked at her. But if he'd made one more comment about Sarah, one more justification, I know. She reached out, carefully took the pistol from his hand. Do you always carry this? Since the night at the garage. Figured if Alexander's men could get to me once, they could do it again. He ran a hand through his hair. I should have told you about the weapon, about... Stop. Vivian's voice was firm. We don't have time for recriminations. We have a board meeting in 45 minutes, and apparently Derek has a nuclear option he's been saving. We need to figure out what it is. The elevator reached their floor. Marcus was waiting, looking frantic. Where the hell were you? The elevator stopped for 8 minutes. Security couldn't override it. He saw their faces. What happened? Alexander Rowan happened, Vivian said. He's downstairs surrendering to the FBI. Long story. Right now, we need to figure out what Derek's planning. They moved to Vivian's office, which had been converted into a war room. Laptops everywhere, files spread across every surface, coffee cups multiplying like bacteria. Derek's been planning this for months, Marcus said, pulling up documents. But everything we found is small stuff. Financial irregularities, minor scandals, nothing that would actually force you out. Alexander said it was big enough to destroy me, Vivian said. What could do that? Caleb was thinking. She could see it. Information about your parents' crash. That's the only thing personal enough to really hurt you. The crash was investigated. Pilot error, weather conditions, bad decisions, nothing scandalous. Unless there was something the investigation missed, or something someone covered up. Caleb started typing. Marcus, pull the NTSB report. Full version, not the public summary. 20 minutes of frantic research later, they found it. Buried in appendices, flagged, but not fully investigated. The plane had been serviced 3 days before the crash by a company that went bankrupt 6 months later. The mechanic who signed off on the inspection had disappeared, and the company had received a large payment from an offshore account 1 week before the crash. Someone sabotaged the plane, Vivian said, her voice hollow. Or paid someone to do shoddy work that looked like natural failure, Caleb said grimly. Either way, this wasn't an accident. Marcus was pale. If Derek has proof of this, if he can show that someone deliberately caused the crash, then he can suggest Vivian's family has enemies, that she's dangerous to work with, that Sterling Global is compromised. Caleb looked at Vivian. It's not about truth. It's about creating doubt. Vivian felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. 12 years. She'd spent 12 years believing her father made a bad call, that weather and exhaustion and stubbornness killed her parents. But if someone deliberately caused the crash, who? The question came out broken. Who would do this? Someone who wanted Sterling Global weakened, someone who benefited from your father's death. Marcus pulled up financial records. After the crash, the company's stock dropped 30%. Several investors tried to buy in at reduced prices. Most were blocked by Richard, but a few succeeded. Derek's father, Caleb said, pointing at the screen. Chen Industries acquired 8% of Sterling Global 6 months after the crash. Bought it from shareholders who panicked and sold low. The pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. Derek's father killed my parents to buy into Sterling Global, Vivian said. And now Derek's trying to finish what his father started. We don't know that for certain. Yes, we do. She stood, pacing. It makes perfect sense. The timing, the motivation, the long-term strategy. The Chens have been circling this company for 12 years, waiting for their moment. Even if it's true, we can't prove it, Marcus pointed out. The mechanic's gone. The company's dissolved. The money trail is cold. Derek will present just enough to create suspicion without actually proving anything. Then we flip it, Caleb said. We don't try to disprove it. We use it. Both Marcus and Vivian looked at him. Derek thinks this information gives him leverage, Caleb explained. But if we already know about it, if we presented ourselves as evidence of the Chen family's long-term campaign against Sterling Global, we control the narrative. He's not exposing a scandal. He's confirming our accusation. That's insane, Marcus said. That's strategy, Vivian corrected. She was thinking now, CEO mode fully engaged. We go into the board meeting armed with everything. Alexander's confession linking Derek to Sarah's death, evidence of the Chen family's sabotage, documentation of Derek's payments to Meridian. We don't defend ourselves. We attack. And if the board doesn't believe us, then I lose the company. Vivian met Marcus's eyes. But at least I lose it fighting instead of cowering. The board meeting started exactly at noon in Sterling Global's main conference room. 14 board members, Vivian at the head of the table, Derek Chen in the visitor's chair with his lawyer beside him. Richard Sterling sat at the far end, face unreadable. Derek smiled as Vivian entered. Ms. Hart, so glad you could make it. I was worried the FBI might have delayed you. The FBI was very understanding, Vivian said coolly, especially after we provided evidence of your involvement in corporate espionage and murder. That wiped the smile off his face. That's a serious accusation, backed by serious evidence. Vivian opened her laptop, projected documents onto the screen. Alexander Rowan's complete files on Meridian intelligence operations, including records of your $2 million payment for information about Sterling Global, including communications about my husband's wife, Sarah Chen, your sister, and the arrangements made to ensure her death. The room erupted, board members talking over each other, Derek's lawyer objecting, someone demanding explanations. Richard Sterling's voice cut through the chaos. Let her continue. Vivian nodded to her grandfather, then pulled up the next document. This is the NTSB report on my parents' plane crash. Appendix D, page 47. Note the irregularities in the maintenance records. The service company that worked on the plane 3 days before the crash received a payment of $500,000 from an offshore account. That account traces back to Chen Industries. Derek was on his feet. This is absurd. Sit down, Mr. Chen, Richard said quietly, or leave. Derek sat, but his face was red with fury. Vivian continued. Your father orchestrated my parents' deaths to weaken Sterling Global and acquire shares at reduced prices. You've spent 12 years building on that foundation, trying to complete his work. You hired Meridian Intelligence to gather intelligence. You recruited my employees as informants. You killed my husband's wife to punish him for leaving your family's sphere of influence. And now you're here, calling for my removal, because you think you can finally take what your father started stealing 12 years ago. You can't prove any of this, Derek spat. These are conspiracy theories. Alexander Rowan is downstairs giving a full confession to the FBI, Caleb said from his seat beside Vivian, including your involvement in Sarah's death, including the offshore payments, including everything. He's a criminal trying to save himself. He's your co-conspirator turning state's evidence, Vivian corrected, and he's very thorough. 20 years of documentation, all being handed over right now. One of the board members, Patricia Wu, who'd been with Sterling Global for 30 years, spoke up. Even if this is all true, Vivian, it doesn't change the concerns about your judgment. You married someone with criminal connections. I married someone my grandfather selected, Vivian interrupted. Someone who had inside knowledge of the very network attacking this company. Someone who helped us identify the traitors in our own ranks and build the case that's currently destroying Derek's operation. That's not poor judgment. That's strategic brilliance. Richard Sterling stood. Every head turned. I arranged Vivian's marriage to Caleb Rowan, he said clearly. I knew about Meridian Intelligence. I knew about Derek's involvement. I knew that putting Caleb inside our family would give us the intelligence advantage we needed. He looked at Derek. What I didn't know, until my granddaughter's investigation revealed it, was the depth of your family's crimes. The murder of my son and daughter-in-law. The systematic attack on everything they built. His voice went cold. You want to call an emergency meeting? Fine, I'm calling a vote. Derek Chen's attempt to acquire Sterling Global shares is hereby blocked. His consulting contracts with this company are terminated, and I'm recommending we file criminal charges for industrial espionage and conspiracy to commit murder. You can't do this, Derek started. I'm the majority shareholder, Richard said. I can do exactly this. All in favor? 13 hands went up. Only Derek's lawyer abstained. Motion passes. Richard sat back down. Get out of my building, Mr. Chen. Security will escort you. Derek stood slowly, his face twisted with rage. This isn't over. You think you've won because you have evidence? I have lawyers. I have resources. I'll drag this company through every court in the country. And you'll lose, Vivian said. Because we have Alexander's testimony, we have documentation, and we have 12 years of your family's crimes all laid out for prosecutors. You're not fighting Sterling Global. You're fighting federal law enforcement. Good luck with that. 2 security guards appeared at the door. Derek looked between them, then at Vivian, then at Richard. You killed her. Caleb said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. My wife, mother of my daughter. You killed her because I married into your family and then left, because I chose her over your status games. She was weak, Derek said. She chose a criminal over her family. Caleb was moving before anyone could react. He didn't hit Derek. Security grabbed him first, but the intent was clear. Vivian caught his arm, held him back. He's not worth it, she said quietly. Ella needs you. Caleb stopped struggling, but his eyes stayed locked on Derek. If you ever come near my daughter, if you ever even think about her, I will make sure you never see daylight again. That's not a threat, that's a promise. Derek was escorted out. The board meeting continued for another hour, dealing with the aftermath. Official statements to prepare, legal teams to coordinate with, damage control for the stock price. Through it all, Vivian felt oddly detached, like watching someone else run her company. Her parents hadn't died in an accident. They'd been murdered, and she'd spent 12 years blaming her father's stubbornness instead of hunting for the truth. When the meeting finally ended, Richard approached her. You did well, he said quietly. You knew. It wasn't a question. About the Chen family, about the crash. I suspected, could never prove it. The trails were too cold, the evidence too scattered. He looked older suddenly, all 83 years showing. I've spent 12 years trying to protect this company, and you. The marriage to Caleb was my last play. My way of giving you the tools to finish this fight. You could have told me. Would you have believed me? Without evidence? He shook his head. You needed to find it yourself. Needed to understand what we're up against. Vivian wanted to be angry, wanted to rage at him for the manipulation, for the secrets. But looking at his face, she saw only a tired old man who'd lost his son and spent more than a decade trying to avenge him. What happens now? She asked. Now we rebuild. Again. Richard put a hand on her shoulder. You're stronger than your father was, Vivian. Smarter. You won't make his mistakes. I might make different ones. Probably. But you won't make them alone. He glanced at Caleb, who was talking quietly with Marcus. He's good for you. Don't let him go when this year ends. That's not... We haven't discussed... Then discuss it. Richard started toward the door, then paused. Your grandmother was right. Sometimes the best foundations are built on necessity, but they're maintained by choice. After he left, Vivian stood in the empty conference room, looking at the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. Somewhere down there, Derek Chen was being escorted out by FBI agents. Alexander Rowan was negotiating his immunity deal. Her parents' murderers were finally facing consequences, and she felt nothing. No triumph, no relief, just exhausted emptiness. Hey, Caleb's voice gentle. You okay? No. She didn't turn around. My parents were murdered. I just destroyed a man's life. My entire marriage is based on corporate strategy, and in 9 months, you're leaving. So no, I'm not okay. Who said I'm leaving? That made her turn. The contract says we can divorce after 12 months. Can, not must. He moved closer. I've been thinking about that, about what happens when this year ends. Caleb, Ella asked me last night if you were going to be her mom forever. Not stepmom, not dad's wife. Mom. His voice was rough. I didn't know how to answer because I don't know what this is, what we are. We're a strategic arrangement, Vivian said automatically. Is that what it felt like last night, when we kissed? That was... She struggled for words. A mistake. Complications we don't need. Or it was real. He was right in front of her now. Maybe the most real thing either of us has had in years. You said you wanted to stop pretending this was just business, so stop. And then what? We play happy family until someone else tries to kill you? Until the next crisis? Until you realize Ella deserves better than a workaholic stepmother who doesn't know how to be human? You're learning, Caleb said. I've watched you learn. 3 weeks ago, you couldn't name Ella's favorite color. Now you know she likes purple, hates mushrooms, and cheats at every card game. You're not perfect at this. Neither am I. But we're trying. Vivian felt something crack in her chest. I don't know how to do this. How to be someone's partner, someone's mother. I know how to run companies and crush competitors. That's all I've ever known. Then learn something new. He took her hands. We have 9 months left on the contract. Use them. Figure out who you are when you're not being CEO. Figure out if you want this, us, after the legal obligation ends. And if I don't, then we file for divorce in 9 months and go our separate ways. But at least we'll know we tried. Vivienne looked at their joined hands. Caleb's were calloused from actual work, scarred from years of mechanical repairs. Hers were soft, manicured, useless for anything except typing and signing contracts. Different worlds, different lives. But maybe that was the point. Okay, she said quietly. 9 months. We try. No more pretending? No more pretending. He kissed her then, soft and careful, like she was something precious instead of sharp edges and calculated moves. When they broke apart, Vivienne rested her forehead against his. I'm going to mess this up, she warned. Probably I'll mess it up too. And Ella's going to have questions. So many questions. She's 6. Questions are her primary form of communication. Despite everything, Vivienne almost smiled. What's her favorite colors? Purple, but specifically lavender purple, not grape purple. Very important distinction. And her favorite food? Besides orange chicken? Probably mac and cheese, the box kind, not the fancy kind. She has strong opinions about processed cheese. Good to know. Vivienne pulled back slightly. I should probably learn these things. If we're going to try, Caleb finished. If we're going to try, her phone buzzed. Marcus with updates on the FBI situation, the press response, the stock price. The world still turning, still demanding her attention. But for the first time in 12 years, Vivienne considered not answering immediately. I need to pick up Ella from school, Caleb said, checking his watch. Want to come? I have a conference call. Vivienne. She looked at him, at the quiet invitation in his eyes, at the chance to choose something other than work for once. I need to reschedule the call, she said finally, and probably clear my afternoon, and definitely call Marcus to handle the press. Is that a yes? That's me trying. She grabbed her jacket. How long do we have before pickup? 30 minutes. Then let's go, before I change my mind. They made it to Ella's school with 2 minutes to spare. Vivienne had never been here before, had never thought about where Caleb took his daughter every day, what her world looked like. The building was old brick, probably a century old, with a playground that had seen better days and a sign proclaiming excellence in education since 1923. Parents clustered near the entrance, chatting and checking phones. Vivienne felt suddenly out of place in her designer suit and heels. Relax, Caleb said quietly. They're just people. People who know how to be parents. I don't even know what grade she's in. First, Mrs. Patterson's class. Ella loves her except when they do spelling tests. The doors opened and children poured out like water from a broken dam. Loud, chaotic, all talking at once. Vivienne watched Caleb's face light up as he spotted Ella, watched the little girl's face mirror the expression. Then Ella saw Vivienne and stopped dead. You came! She dropped her backpack and ran, throwing herself at Vivienne with enough force to nearly knock her over. Daddy said you were busy, but you came. Vivienne caught her awkwardly, unused to small bodies and enthusiastic hugs. Yes, I came. Did you leave work early? Daddy says you never leave work early. I rescheduled some things. For me? Ella's eyes were enormous. For us, Caleb corrected gently. Vivienne wanted to see your school. It's not very fancy, Ella said seriously. Not like your building, but Mrs. Patterson is really nice and we have a class hamster named Mr. Whiskers. A hamster, Vivienne repeated. Is that better or worse than a dog? Way worse. Hamsters are boring. They just sleep all day. Unlike you, Caleb said, picking up her backpack, who never sleeps. I sleep. I just don't like naps. They walked back to the car like that. Ella chattering about her day, Caleb interjecting occasional comments. Vivienne trying to follow the rapid-fire 6-year-old logic. Something about sharing time and a boy named Marcus who ate glue. Not our Marcus, Caleb clarified, seeing Vivienne's face. I would hope not. At home. When had she started thinking of it as home instead of the penthouse? Ella immediately dumped her backpack and announced she was making Vivienne a welcome home card. I've been living here for 3 weeks, Vivian pointed out. But you never came to my school before. That's different. Ella was already digging through her art supplies. It needs glitter. All important cards need glitter. I hate glitter, Vivian said. You'll like this glitter. It's special. Caleb was trying not to laugh. Just accept the glitter. Fighting it only makes it spread. An hour later, Vivienne was covered in purple glitter, lavender purple, very important distinction, and holding a card that proclaimed her the best stepmom ever in crayon. I'm not technically your stepmom, she pointed out. You married Daddy. That makes you my stepmom. Ella's logic was unassailable. Do you like it? Vivienne looked at the card. It was objectively terrible. Uneven letters, way too much glitter, a drawing that might be a person or possibly an elephant. But Ella's face was so hopeful, so genuinely proud of her work. I love it, Vivian said, and realized she meant it. Really, I'm going to put it on my desk at work. Ella's whole face lit up. Then everyone will see it. Yes, everyone will see it. After Ella ran off to start on homework, Caleb appeared with 2 glasses of wine. You survived your first school pickup. Barely. How do you do this every day? Practice, patience, accepting that chaos is the natural state of parenting. He handed her a glass. The glitter suits you. Vivian looked down at her designer suit, now decorated with purple sparkles. 3 weeks ago, this would have horrified her. Now she just shrugged. I have others. That's not what I meant. I know. She sipped the wine. This is harder than running a company. Parenting? Being human. Having people who depend on you for things other than quarterly earnings. Ella made me a card, and She stopped, struggling for words. I don't know what to do with that. How to deserve it. You don't deserve it. You just accept it. Caleb sat beside her on the couch. Ella doesn't love strategically. She just loves. And right now, she's decided she loves you. Why? Because you showed up. Because you got covered in glitter and didn't complain. Because you're trying. He took her hand. That's all kids really want. Someone who tries. Vivian looked at the card, still in her other hand. Glitter was already transferring to her fingers. What if I'm terrible at this? Then you'll be terrible at it together with me. I'm making this up as I go, too. You're a good father. I'm a terrified father who reads parenting books at 2 a.m. and still has no idea what I'm doing, he smiled. But I show up every day. That's the secret. There is no secret. You just keep showing up. From the kitchen, Ella called out, Daddy, I need help with math. See? Caleb stood. Showing up. Come on, you can help. I don't remember first grade math. It's addition. You have an MBA. You'll figure it out. 20 minutes later, Vivian was explaining addition using chocolate chips again. Ella was carefully eating the teaching materials again, and Caleb was making dinner while half watching to make sure they didn't derail completely. This was her life now. This chaotic, glitter-covered, chocolate chip-depleted reality. And somehow, impossibly, it felt right. That night, after Ella was asleep, Vivian stood in her office staring at her laptop. Emails from the board, updates from Marcus, press requests, investor calls. The normal chaos of running Sterling Global. But for the first time in her career, she found herself closing the laptop without answering everything. You're learning, Caleb said from the doorway. Learning what? That the world doesn't end if you take a night off. The Singapore deal still needs, Marcus can handle it, or it can wait until tomorrow, or radical thought, it can wait until you've had a full night's sleep. Vivian turned to face him. He was in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, hair still wet from a shower, looking nothing like the polished professionals she usually surrounded herself with. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. Be someone who leaves work unfinished, someone who chooses personal life over professional obligations. Then start small, one night, one choice. He moved closer. Stay here with me instead of going back to your office. We'll watch something mindless, drink too much wine, fall asleep on the couch like normal people. I'm not normal people. Tonight you could be. It was terrifying. The idea of just stopping, of choosing rest over productivity, connection over achievement. But looking at Caleb's face, at the open invitation there, Vivian found herself nodding. Okay, one night, he agreed. We'll work up to 2. They ended up on the couch with a bottle of wine and a movie that Vivian couldn't have named afterward if her life depended on it. She was too aware of Caleb beside her, his arm around her shoulders, the quiet rhythm of his breathing. Somewhere between the second glass of wine and whatever happened in the movie's third act, she realized she was happy. Not satisfied from closing a deal, not triumphant from crushing a competitor, actually genuinely happy. "What?" Caleb asked, noticing her expression. "Nothing, just, this is nice." Revolutionary concept, relaxation. "Shut up," he kissed her temple. "Make me." So she did. Turned, kissed him properly, tasted wine and possibility and choice. When they broke apart, both slightly breathless, Caleb smiled. "Much better than shutting up." "I'm still bad at this," Vivian warned. "Good. I'd hate for you to be perfect at everything." They fell asleep like that, tangled together on a couch that cost more than most cars, wine glasses empty on the coffee table, movie credits rolling unwatched, and for the first time in 12 years, Vivian slept through the night without dreaming about work. The morning Vivian woke up on the couch, her neck stiff and her mouth tasting like yesterday's wine, she found Ella standing 2 feet away, staring. "You slept here," the little girl announced. "I did." Vivian sat up carefully, trying not to disturb Caleb, who was still asleep beside her. "Is that okay?" Ella considered this with the gravity of a federal judge. "Does this mean you're really married now? Like, for real?" "We've been really married for 3 weeks." "No, you've been paper married. That's different." Ella climbed onto the couch between them. "Sophie's parents are paper married. They live in different rooms and don't talk except about bills. But her grandma and grandpa are real married. They fall asleep on the couch together." Vivian looked at this 6-year-old philosopher and realized the kid had just summed up her entire relationship in about 30 seconds. "We're trying to be real married," she said carefully. "Good." Ella snuggled against her. "I like real married better." Caleb stirred, opened his eyes, and found both of them watching him. "This is either really sweet or really creepy." "Creepy," Vivian and Ella said simultaneously, then looked at each other and laughed. The next 6 months unfolded in a pattern Vivian had never experienced. Work still consumed huge portions of her day. Sterling Global didn't run itself, but she carved out spaces for other things. Dinner at 6 most nights. Weekends where she actually left the office. A vacation to the beach that Ella planned with the precision of a military operation. "We need 3 kinds of sunscreen," Ella explained seriously, consulting her list. 1 for faces, 1 for bodies, 1 for after swimming, different SPFs. "She's more organized than my executive team," Vivian muttered to Caleb. "She gets it from you. I'm not this detail-oriented." "I'm not—" Vivian stopped, looked at Ella's color-coded packing list. "Okay, maybe a little." The beach trip was chaos. Ella insisted on building an elaborate sandcastle that kept getting destroyed by waves. Caleb got sunburned despite 3 kinds of sunscreen. Vivian discovered she hated sand and everything but loved the sound of Ella's laughter when the waves chased her. On the second night, after Ella was asleep, Vivian and Caleb walked along the beach. The ocean was dark, stars scattered overhead like someone had spilled diamonds. "I talked to my lawyer yesterday," Vivian said. Caleb went still beside her. "About the divorce?" "About modifying the prenup." She stopped walking, turned to face him. "The original agreement ends in 3 months. I want to change it." "To what?" "To nothing. No end date, no exit clause, just a normal marriage." She took a breath. "If you want that." "What about Sterling Global, the board, the investors? Can deal with it. I'm not making life decisions based on quarterly earnings anymore." She stepped closer. "I'm making them based on what I want. And I want this. You, Ella, falling asleep on couches and eating chocolate chips instead of teaching with them. All of it." Caleb's hands found her waist. "You're sure? Because 3 months ago you were counting down the days until this ended. 3 months ago I didn't know what I was missing. Now I do, and I'm not letting it go." He kissed her then, soft and deep, tasting like salt air and promises. When they broke apart, he was smiling. "Ella's going to be insufferable about this. She's been planning our real wedding for weeks." "Our what?" She decided the City Hall thing doesn't count. We need a proper ceremony with cake and flowers and her wearing a purple dress. Vivian laughed despite herself. Of course she did. So, do we give her what she wants? We give her what we all want. Vivian looked out at the ocean. A real marriage, a real family. The whole complicated mess. It's going to be messy, Caleb warned. Good. I'm tired of things being perfect and empty. Back in New York, the fallout from Derek Chen's arrest continued. Federal prosecutors built their case methodically, using Alexander's testimony and Meridian's files to construct charges that spanned 2 continents. Derek fought back with expensive lawyers and aggressive PR, but the evidence was overwhelming. The civil suits were worse. Families affected by the plane crash, Vivian's parents weren't the only victims Derek's father had targeted, filed wrongful death claims. Shareholders sued for fraud. The Chen family empire started crumbling under the weight of its own corruption. Vivian watched it happen with grim satisfaction, but also a strange emptiness. Revenge didn't feel the way she'd expected. Her parents were still dead. 12 years were still lost. Victory tasted like ash. You okay? Marcus asked one afternoon, finding her staring out her office window. I thought I'd feel better, knowing they're facing consequences. But you don't? I don't feel worse. That's something. She turned from the window. How's the Singapore deal? Closed. Very successfully. We're up 18% this quarter. Marcus set down his tablet. You've been leaving at 6 every night for 3 months. The company hasn't collapsed. Almost like it could run without you working 80 hours a week. Don't sound so smug. Someone has to. You won't admit it yourself. He was right, annoyingly. Sterling Global was thriving. Profits up, expansion on track, new contracts signed, and Vivian was working fewer hours than she had in a decade. I'm getting soft, she said. You're getting healthy. There's a difference. Marcus headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth, your parents would be proud. Not just of the company, of you, of the life you're building. After he left, Vivian sat with that thought. Her parents had died chasing success, working themselves to exhaustion. She'd spent 12 years following the same path, but somewhere in the last 6 months, she'd stepped off that treadmill, and the world hadn't ended. Her phone buzzed. Text from Caleb. Ella has a question about fractions. Your expertise required. She smiled, packed her briefcase, and left at 5:45. Marcus would handle anything urgent. The rest could wait until tomorrow. At home, Ella was indeed struggling with fractions, but her question was mostly an excuse to see if Vivian would actually show up. The little girl's face lit up when she walked in. You came! Daddy said you would, but Sophie said important people are always late. I'm not late. I'm early. That's even better. Ella dragged her to the kitchen table where a math worksheet waited. Okay, so if you have 3/4 of a pizza and you eat 1/4, how much is left? Half, Vivian said automatically. Show your work. The 6-year-old is grading me now? Mrs. Patterson says always show your work. Ella was serious. Otherwise, it's just guessing. So Vivian showed her work, drawing pizza slices and explaining subtraction, while Caleb made dinner and tried not to laugh at her increasingly elaborate diagrams. You're overcomplicating this, he said finally. I'm being thorough. You're drawing architectural plans for pizza. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. Ella giggled. You sound like Mrs. Patterson. Thank you. Mrs. Patterson sounds very sensible. After homework and dinner, Ella asked to watch a movie. Something animated with talking animals that Vivian would normally consider beneath her intellectual dignity. But halfway through, she found herself actually invested in whether the rabbit won the race. You're crying, Caleb observed. I'm not crying, my eyes are watering. That's what I said about onions. This is different. The rabbit trained so hard and then... She stopped. I'm not discussing this. But she was smiling, and Caleb was too, and Ella was completely oblivious, absorbed in the movie. This was her life now. Pizza fractions and animated rabbits and stupid arguments about whether crying at kids' movies counted as actual crying. It was ridiculous. It was perfect. The real wedding happened on a Saturday in October, 8 months after the City Hall ceremony. Ella had planned every detail with the help of grandmother Catherine, who'd gotten surprisingly invested in the project. Purple flowers? Ella had insisted. Lavender purple, not grape purple. Obviously, Catherine had agreed, like this was the most reasonable demand in the world. The ceremony took place in the penthouse, which had been transformed by an army of florists and decorators. About 50 people attended, family, close friends, a few sterling global executives who'd become actual friends over the past months. Richard Sterling walked Vivian down the makeshift aisle, his hand steady on her arm. "Your parents would love this," he said quietly. "Not the flowers or the fuss, but seeing you happy. That would mean everything. I wish they were here." "They are. In you. In everything you've built." He kissed her cheek. "Go get married. For real this time." Caleb waited at the end of the aisle wearing a tuxedo that fit perfectly because Vivian had insisted on proper tailoring. Ella stood beside him in lavender purple, holding a basket of flower petals she was supposed to scatter but kept clutching protectively. The ceremony was short. They'd written their own vows, which felt both terrifying and necessary. 8 months ago, Vivian started, "I married you because I had no choice, because my grandfather threatened my company and you needed protection for Ella. It was business, strategic, safe." "Not the most romantic opening," Caleb murmured, and people laughed. But somewhere between forced proximity and chocolate chip fractions, something changed. "You taught me that life doesn't have to be perfect to be worthwhile, that showing up matters more than winning, that family isn't about blood or contracts. It's about choosing to be there every day, even when it's hard." Her voice cracked slightly. "Especially when it's hard. So I'm choosing you, not because a contract says I have to, not because it's strategic, but because I love you, both of you. And I want to keep showing up for as long as you'll have me." Ella whispered loudly, "That's really good." "Your turn," Vivian told Caleb. He took her hands. "I spent 4 years running, hiding from my brother, from my past, from anything that might hurt Ella. I thought safety meant invisibility, that the best way to protect my daughter was to make sure no one knew we existed. Then I married you, and everything I thought I knew about safety changed, because you don't hide, you fight. You take on enemies twice your size and you win. And you taught me that maybe the best way to protect Ella isn't to run. It's to stand my ground with someone who refuses to back down." He smiled. "You're terrifying and brilliant, and you burn dinner more often than you'll admit. You argue about pizza diagrams and cry at kids' movies, and you've made our home feel like a home instead of just a place we sleep. I love you. I choose you. For real this time." The officiant, a judge Catherine knew from some charity board, pronounced them married. Again. For real this time. Ella threw all the flower petals at once, covering them both in lavender purple. The reception was exactly the kind of thing Vivian used to hate. Loud, chaotic, people dancing badly to music that was too loud. But watching Ella teach Marcus how to do some complicated kid dance, watching her grandfather actually smile while talking to Caleb about fishing, watching all these separate pieces of her life come together. "What are you thinking?" Caleb asked, finding her on the terrace where she'd escaped for air. "That I used to think success meant conquering things. Markets, competitors, quarterly projections, measurable victories. And now? Now I think maybe success is just this. People you love in a room, bad dancing, too much cake." She turned to him. "Is that naive?" "It's healthy. There's a difference." They stood there for a moment, watching the city lights. Then Caleb pulled out his phone, showed her a message. "Alexander's sentencing is next week. Prosecutors are recommending 25 years. Derek's trial starts in January. How do you feel about it?" Relieved, sad, angry, all of it at once. He pocketed the phone, but mostly just tired of thinking about them. "They've taken enough of my life." "Of our life," Vivian corrected. "They came after all of us. And we won. We survived. That's different." "Is it?" Caleb turned to face her fully. "We didn't just survive. We built something. We took this forced arrangement and turned it into a family. That's not just survival. That's transformation." Vivian thought about that. 8 months ago, she'd been alone in this penthouse, eating takeout at her desk, measuring her worth by stock prices and market share. Now she had glitter permanently embedded in her carpet, a refrigerator covered in child art, and a husband who knew exactly how she took her coffee. "I'm still not good at this," she said. "Being human, having a family. I forgot Ella's parent-teacher conference last week. And then you rescheduled it and brought cupcakes to apologize. You're learning." I yelled at her yesterday for leaving her shoes in the hallway. She left 6 pairs of shoes in the hallway, in a row, like an obstacle course. Yelling was proportional. Despite herself, Vivian smiled. You're making excuses for me. I'm reminding you that perfection isn't the goal. Showing up is the goal, and you show up every day. That's what matters. From inside, Ella's voice called out, Daddy, Vivian, they're cutting the cake. We should, Vivian started. Yeah. But Caleb didn't move, just looked at her with an expression that made her chest tight. I love you, for real this time. You said that in your vows. I know, but it bears repeating. She kissed him, quick and hard. I love you too. Now let's go eat cake before Ella gives herself a sugar high. The cake was ridiculous. 3 tiers covered in lavender purple flowers probably cost more than most people's cars. Ella insisted on feeding them both the first bite, which resulted in frosting everywhere and photographs that would definitely get used for blackmail later. Marcus gave a toast that was equal parts touching and embarrassing, recounting Vivian's transformation from corporate ice queen to someone who occasionally remembers to eat lunch. I still skip lunch sometimes, Vivian protested. Less than before. We're calling it progress. Grandmother Catherine's toast was shorter but hit harder. To my granddaughter, who finally learned that the best acquisitions aren't companies, they're people worth keeping. Richard Sterling simply raised his glass. To family, the one you're born into and the one you choose. May you always know the difference. Later, much later, after guests had left and Ella had finally crashed from her sugar high, Vivian found herself back on the terrace. The city was quieter now. 2 a.m. stillness broken only by distant sirens. Caleb joined her, 2 glasses of wine in hand. Can't sleep? Just thinking. About? A year ago, I was alone in this apartment, working until I passed out, convinced that was success. Now I have a husband, a daughter, and a refrigerator full of questionable kid art. She took the wine. I don't know if I'm better at my job, but I'm better at being alive. Those aren't mutually exclusive. They felt like it. For a long time. She sipped the wine. My parents died because they chose work over safety. I was doing the same thing, just slower. And now? Now I choose differently. Most days. She looked at him. Some days I still want to work until midnight. Want to crush every competitor and dominate every market. So do that, just not every day. And not alone. Vivian leaned against him. When does the contract officially expire? 3 weeks. Why? Because I want to burn it, ceremonially, maybe with Ella's help. She loves crafts. Caleb laughed. You want to have a contract burning ceremony? I want to acknowledge that this stopped being a contract about 6 months ago. It's real now. We're real. We've been real, Caleb said. But yeah, let's burn some papers. Ella will love it. 3 weeks later, they stood in the penthouse fireplace, ridiculous luxury feature that Vivian had never actually used, with Ella holding a long lighter like a torch. Are you sure we should let her do this? Vivian asked nervously. She's 6, not incompetent. Caleb handed Ella the prenuptial agreement. Okay, kiddo, light it up. Ella, with great ceremony, set fire to the corner of the contract. They dropped it in the fireplace and watched it burn, lavender purple flames from whatever chemical treatment the paper had received. What does this mean? Ella asked, watching the ashes. It means we're a real family now, Vivian said. No papers, no rules, no end date. Just us. We were already a real family, Ella pointed out. The paper was just being slow about it. Out of the mouths of children, Vivian thought. The 6-year-old had understood what she'd taken 8 months to figure out. The next morning brought news that Derek Chen had accepted a plea bargain. 20 years for conspiracy, fraud, and an accessory to murder. He'd serve at least 15 before parole consideration. It's not enough, Vivian said, reading the headlines. It never is, Caleb agreed, but it's something. He killed your wife, my parents. He should what? Suffer more? Die in prison? Would that actually make you feel better? Vivian thought about it, really thought. No, I don't think anything would make me feel better about my parents being gone. But knowing he can't hurt anyone else, that helps. Then we take the win.
imperfect as it is.
Alexander's sentencing came 2 days later. 27 years, no parole for at least 20. The judge cited callous disregard for human life and systematic exploitation of vulnerable parties. Alexander showed no emotion as sentence was read. Caleb watched the sentencing via video feed, Vivian beside him. When it was over, he sat very still for a long moment. "You okay?" she asked. "He's my brother. I should feel something." "You do feel something. You just don't know what to do with it." "I'm relieved and sad and angry that I'm sad because he doesn't deserve it." Caleb rubbed his face. "How do you reconcile loving someone and hating what they became?" "You accept that people are complicated, that family doesn't mean unconditional forgiveness, and that it's okay to grieve the brother you thought you had while being glad the monster he became is locked away." Caleb looked at her. "When did you get so wise about family?" "About 8 months ago, when I accidentally acquired one." That night, they told Ella about the sentencing. Caleb had debated whether a 6-year-old needed to know, but Vivian argued that honesty mattered more than protection. "Your Uncle Alexander did bad things," Caleb explained carefully. "He hurt people. Now he's going to jail for a very long time." Ella processed this with her usual seriousness. "Does that mean the bad men won't come anymore?" "That's right. No more bad men." "Good." She went back to coloring, then without looking up, "Is he why Mommy died?" Caleb's breath caught. Vivian reached over, squeezed his hand. "Yes," he said quietly. "He is." "Then I'm glad he's in jail." Ella kept coloring, purple crayon moving across paper. "Do you miss him?" "I miss who I thought he was, before I knew about the bad things." "That's sad." "Yeah, it is. But you have us now, me and Vivian. We're not sad." Caleb pulled her into a hug. "No, you're definitely not sad." The months that followed settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Sterling Global continued thriving under Vivian's leadership, but she delegated more, trusted her team, stopped treating every decision like a crisis. Marcus got promoted to COO, which he accepted with his usual sarcasm and secret pride. Ella started second grade with Mrs. Chen, no relation to Derek, thankfully, and discovered a love of science that resulted in increasingly complicated experiments taking over the kitchen. "Is this supposed to smell like that?" Vivian asked, examining a beaker of something purple and bubbling. "It's a chemical reaction," Ella explained. "We're making a volcano." "In my kitchen?" "In our kitchen," Caleb corrected. "And yes, it's supposed to smell like that. Probably." The volcano exploded spectacularly, covering all 3 of them in purple foam. Vivian should have been angry, should have worried about the marble counters or the custom cabinets. Instead, she found herself laughing, actually laughing, while Ella danced around proclaiming her scientific genius. "We're never getting this out of the grout," Caleb said, surveying the damage. "Good. It'll remind us that some things matter more than perfect kitchens. Who are you, and what did you do with my wife?" "Your wife learned that purple foam washes off, but memories don't. Let the kid have her volcano." 6 months after the wedding, Vivian got a call from a reporter writing a business profile. The usual questions: leadership strategy, market predictions, advice for aspiring CEOs. Then, "There's been a lot of speculation about how marriage has changed your management style. Some say you've gone soft. Others say you found balance. What's your response?" Vivian thought about the question, thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, working 80-hour weeks and eating cold takeout at her desk. Thought about who she was now, still driven, still competitive, but no longer willing to sacrifice everything for market share. "I haven't gone soft," she said finally. "I've gotten smarter. I used to think success meant never stopping, never resting, never admitting you couldn't do everything alone. I was wrong. Real success is building something sustainable, a company that runs well enough that the CEO can leave at 6, a life that includes more than just work, people who matter more than profit margins." "And your husband? Does he work?" "He's a consultant now, financial systems, security protocols, very good at what he does." It was true. Caleb had started his own consulting firm, using his expertise ethically for once. But mostly, he's a father and a partner, and those are the jobs that matter most. The article ran the following week with the headline, "Vivian Hart, from Ice Queen to Human Being." She hated it, but couldn't really argue. Human being, Marcus read aloud. That's almost a compliment. It's patronizing. It's accurate. A year ago you were barely human. Now you have sticky notes from a 6-year-old on your monitor. Vivian looked at the notes. Reminders to buy more purple markers, and don't forget science fair next Thursday, in Ella's careful handwriting. The sticky notes are organizationally efficient, she protested. The sticky notes are adorable and you love them. I don't... She stopped. Okay, maybe I love them a little. Progress, Marcus declared. The science fair arrived with the kind of chaos only elementary school events could generate. Vivian had blocked off the entire afternoon, much to her executive team's confusion. It's just a science fair, her CFO said, baffled. It's Ella's science fair. She's been working on her project for 3 weeks. I'm going. Ella's project was a working model of the solar system, complete with lights and motorized planets. She'd done most of it herself, with Caleb supervising and Vivian helping with the more complicated orbital calculations. Jupiter's orbit is off, Vivian had pointed out during construction. It's close enough, Caleb had said. Science should be precise. Science should be fun. We're fixing Jupiter's orbit. They'd fixed Jupiter's orbit. At the science fair, Ella stood by her project with enormous pride, explaining planetary motion to anyone who'd listen. Vivian watched from the side, trying not to be the overbearing parent, but failing spectacularly. Her calculations are very sophisticated for 2nd grade, she told another parent. I'm sure they are, the woman said politely, clearly humoring her. No, really. The orbital mathematics, Caleb pulled her away. Let her shine on her own. You don't need to sell it. I'm not selling. I'm explaining. You're doing your business pitch voice. I am not. She stopped. Okay, maybe a little. Ella won 3rd place, which she accepted with grace and immediately declared she'd win 1st next year with a way better project about volcanoes. We've had enough volcanoes, Vivian said firmly, but I have new ideas. Terrifying words, Caleb muttered. That evening, with Ella's ribbon displayed proudly on the refrigerator next to her art collection, Vivian found herself reflecting on the past year. The forced marriage, the corporate espionage, the arrests and trials and revelations, the slow transformation from contract to connection. What are you thinking about? Caleb asked, finding her in the living room. How much has changed? How much I've changed? Regrets? No. Well, maybe one. What's that? That I didn't figure this out sooner, that I wasted years thinking work was enough, that I missed so much because I was too focused on winning. Caleb sat beside her. You can't change the past. You can only build a better future. Is that from a fortune cookie? It's from Ella's 1st grade teacher. She had it on a poster. He smiled. But it's true anyway. I want more time with both of you. I'm thinking about stepping back from day-to-day operations at Sterling Global, staying as CEO, but delegating more. Maybe working 4 days a week instead of 7. That's ambitious for you. I know, but I keep thinking about my parents, about how they died chasing success and never got to enjoy it. I don't want that. I want to be here for Ella's 3rd grade science fair and 4th grade field trips, and whatever comes after. What about the company? The board will have opinions. The board can deal with it. Sterling Global survived for 60 years before I was born. It'll survive me having a life outside work. She took his hand. Besides, I have good people. Marcus is basically running operations already. I'm just making it official. And you're okay with that? Not being indispensable? Vivian thought about it. I'm okay with being dispensable at work and indispensable at home. That feels like the right priority. 2 months later, she announced the transition plan. Sterling Global would maintain her as CEO, but day-to-day operations would shift to Marcus and a newly restructured executive team. Vivian would focus on strategy, major decisions, and not working herself to death. The business press had a field day. Hart steps back. CEO chooses family over fortune. The new face of work-life balance. Half praised her courage, half predicted Sterling Global would collapse within a year. Marcus sent her the worst headlines with commentary. They're giving you 6 months before we crater. Want to take bets? I'll bet we're up 20% this time next year. Confident. Realistic. You're good at your job. Let yourself do it. The first month of the new structure was rocky. Executives who'd relied on Vivian's constant input struggled with autonomy. Board members questioned every decision. Investors worried publicly about leadership stability. But slowly, things settled. Marcus proved himself more than capable. The executive team stepped up. And Sterling Global kept running, kept growing, kept thriving. Vivian discovered she didn't miss the 80-hour weeks, didn't miss the constant crisis management or the midnight conference calls. She missed the control sometimes, the feeling of having her hands on every lever. But then Ella would ask for help with homework, or Caleb would need her opinion on a consulting project, or she'd realize she'd gone 3 whole days without checking email after 7 p.m., and the missing control felt worth it. 6 months into the new structure, Sterling Global posted record profits. The stock was up 23%. Every analyst who'd predicted disaster had to eat their words. "I told you so is beneath me," Vivian told Marcus, "but you're thinking it very loudly." "I'm thinking it at a reasonable volume." That evening, she came home to find Caleb and Ella making dinner, something complicated involving pasta and vegetables and probably too much cheese. The kitchen was a disaster. She didn't care. "How was work?" Caleb asked. "Record quarter, stocks up. Analysts are baffled." "Of course they are. They underestimated you." "They underestimated the team. I'm just the figurehead now." "You're the leader. There's a difference." Ella tugged on her sleeve. "Can you help me with my book report?" "What's it about?" "Family. I'm writing about us." Vivian's chest went tight. "What are you going to say?" "That families come in all types. Some are born, some are chosen, some are made by accident and then become real." Ella said it like she was reciting something she'd practiced. "Mrs. Chen says the best families are the ones that choose to stay together even when it's hard." Mrs. Chen sounds very wise. "She's okay. Not as good as Mrs. Patterson, but okay." Ella pulled out her notebook. "So can you help?" They sat at the kitchen table, Vivian reading over Ella's carefully written sentences while Caleb finished dinner. The report was simple, 7-year-old logic and grammar, but the heart of it was clear. This was her family. The dad who made pancakes and the stepmom who was learning how to be human. The grandfather who played chess and the great-grandmother who taught her about business. The Uncle Marcus who always had candy in his desk. "This is really good," Vivian said, throat tight. "Really?" "Really. You captured something important here." "What's that?" "That family isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, even when it's hard." Ella beamed. "That's exactly what Mrs. Chen said." After dinner, after homework, after Ella's bath and story time, and the complicated ritual of putting a 7-year-old to bed, Vivian found herself on the terrace again. The city stretched out below, millions of lives intersecting in ways they'd never fully understand. A year and a half ago, she'd stood here alone, watching the same city, feeling nothing but ambition and emptiness. Now the view looked different. Same buildings, same lights, but filtered through the lens of everything she'd gained. Caleb joined her, as he always did. It had become their routine, late-night conversations on the terrace, processing the day, making plans, just being together. "Ella's report made me tear up," Vivian admitted. "Me too. She's got a way with words. She gets that from you. She gets it from all of us. You, me, your grandparents, even Marcus." He leaned against the railing. "She's building her own identity from the people who love her. That's what kids do. I want to adopt her. Officially." The words came out before Vivian had fully processed them. But once said, she knew they were right. Caleb turned to look at her. "You want to adopt her, legally. Be her mother, not just her stepmother, if that's okay, if you both want that." "Vivian, I know it's complicated. There's Sarah to consider, and Ella's feelings, and 1,000 legal things. But I love her. I love both of you. And I want it to be official. I want the world to know she's mine." Caleb's eyes were bright. "Ask her, tomorrow. See what she says. And if she says no, then we respect that. But I don't think she'll say no." The next morning, Vivian waited until after breakfast, after Caleb left for a meeting, when it was just her and Ella at the kitchen table. "Can I ask you something important?" Vivian said. Ella looked up from her cereal. "Okay. How would you feel if I adopted you? Officially became your mom, not just your dad's wife?" Ella was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Would I have to call you Mom?" Only if you want to. You can keep calling me Vivian. But if I wanted to call you Mom, I could? Yes, absolutely. Another pause. What about my real mom, the one who died? Vivian's heart cracked. She'll always be your real mom. Nothing changes that. I'd just be your other mom, the one who's here now. Can you have two moms? I think you can have as many people love you as want to, and I love you very much. Ella set down her spoon, came around the table, climbed into Vivian's lap, which was getting harder now that she was 7 and growing like a weed. I'd like that, she said quietly. Being officially yours. Vivian hugged her, careful not to squeeze too hard, feeling tears she didn't bother hiding. Then we'll make it official. The adoption process took 4 months. Paperwork, court dates, a judge who asked Ella directly if this was what she wanted. The little girl, in her purple dress and serious expression, said yes without hesitation. When the judge signed the final decree, Vivian officially became Ella's mother. Not stepmother, not legal guardian. Mother. They celebrated with cake, always cake in this family, and Ella made cards for everyone announcing her new mom who was already kind of her mom, but now it's official. Your grammar needs work, Vivian said, reading the card. Your face needs work, Ella shot back, then giggled. I learned that from Uncle Marcus. I'm going to kill Marcus. That's illegal. I learned that from you. Caleb was trying not to laugh. She's definitely your daughter, has your argumentative streak. She has your smart mouth. Also true. That night, after Ella was asleep, Vivian updated her emergency contacts, added Ella as daughter, changed her beneficiaries, made it official in every small bureaucratic way. How does it feel? Caleb asked. Terrifying. What if I mess this up? What if I'm a terrible mother? You've been her mother for over a year now. You're doing fine. I forgot her dentist appointment last week and rescheduled it immediately. Nobody's perfect. I yelled at her for leaving markers uncapped. The markers were everywhere, on the couch, the wall, the floor. Yelling was proportional. I don't know how to braid hair. YouTube exists. You'll learn. Vivian leaned against him. I'm going to mess this up 1,000 different ways. Probably, but you'll show up anyway. That's what matters. 2 years after the forced marriage, Sterling Global held its annual shareholders meeting. Vivian stood at the podium, looking at the faces of investors and board members and analysts who'd watched her journey. 2 years ago, she began, many of you questioned my leadership. A forced marriage, corporate espionage, family drama that played out in headlines. You had every right to be concerned. She pulled up a slide. Financial growth, market expansion, successful acquisitions. The numbers spoke for themselves. Sterling Global is stronger than it's ever been. Stock up 40%, revenue doubled. Market share increased in every territory. We've launched 3 new divisions and acquired 2 competitors. By every measurable metric, we're succeeding. Another slide. This one showed her calendar, color-coded blocks of time. But I'm also working fewer hours than I have in 15 years. I leave at 6 most nights. I take weekends off. I haven't checked email after 9 p.m. in 8 months, and somehow the company hasn't collapsed. Murmurs through the audience. Here's what I've learned, Vivian continued. Leadership isn't about controlling everything. It's about building systems that work without you. Teams that can make decisions. People who step up when you step back. I was holding Sterling Global back by refusing to delegate, by insisting only I could make decisions, by treating the company like it would die without my constant attention. She looked at Marcus sitting in the front row. It won't die without me. It'll thrive. Because I hired people smarter than me and finally got out of their way. So what's your role now? An investor called out. Vision, strategy, making sure we stay true to our values while growing, and being a human being instead of a corporate machine. Because companies are built by people, and people need to be more than their job titles. She closed her laptop. Questions? A dozen hands went up. Vivian fielded them all. Financial projections, expansion plans, competitive threats. She had answers because she still knew her company. But she wasn't drowning in details anymore. Wasn't micromanaging every decision. After the meeting, Richard found her in the hallway. Your father would be proud, he said. Would he? I'm not running the company the way he did. Exactly. He'd be proud you were smart enough to find a better way. Richard squeezed her shoulder. I'm proud too, for what it's worth. It's worth a lot. That evening, she came home to chaos. Ella had decided to reorganize her room, which meant every possession she owned was scattered across the living room in some organizational system only she understood. This is the keep forever pile, Ella explained. This is the maybe keep pile. This is the give away but feel sad about pile. Where's the put back in your room pile? Vivian asked. That's not a category. It should be. You sound like Daddy. Your father has good organizational instincts. They spent 2 hours sorting through 7 years of accumulated possessions. Toys that no longer interested her, clothes that no longer fit, books she'd outgrown. Ella narrated the history of each item, where it came from, why it mattered, whether it deserved to stay. This was from my first mom, she said, holding up a stuffed rabbit. She gave it to me when I was born. Vivian's heart squeezed. That definitely stays. In the keep forever pile? In the keep forever pile. Ella set it aside carefully, then picked up a drawing, one of her early attempts, all stick figures and crooked houses. This is from when we first moved here. I drew our family, see? Daddy, me, you, Mr. Snuffles. I remember. You gave it to me and I put it on my desk. You still have it there. Of course I do. It's in the keep forever pile, too. By the time they finished, Ella's room was organized, the living room was clean, and they'd filled 3 boxes for donation. Caleb made dinner while they worked, something involving chicken and vegetables that smelled incredible. Productive afternoon? He asked. We reorganized Ella's entire life into piles, Vivian said. It was very efficient. And emotional, Ella added. We cried about the rabbit. We did not cry. You got misty. That's different than crying, Caleb grinned. Sure it is. After dinner, after homework, after the nightly ritual of bath and books and bedtime, Vivian and Caleb ended up on the terrace. Their spot. Their routine. I've been thinking, Vivian said. Dangerous words. About expanding the family. Caleb went very still. As in maybe Ella shouldn't be an only child. Maybe we should consider... She stopped. I know it's complicated. I'm 43, you're 34, we're both busy, and there's no guarantee it would even work. But I keep thinking about it, about giving Ella a sibling, about having a baby that's ours from the start. You want a baby. I want our baby, if that's possible, if you want that too. Caleb pulled her close. I want that. I've wanted that for months but didn't know how to ask. So we try? We try. It took 8 months. 8 months of hoping and disappointment and medical consultations, and the terrifying reminder that bodies don't always cooperate with plans. Vivian approached it like a business project at first, tracking cycles, scheduling optimally, treating it like another goal to achieve. You're making spreadsheets about this, Caleb said, finding her at her laptop. Spreadsheets are organizationally efficient. Spreadsheets are killing the romance. There's nothing romantic about timing intercourse to maximize conception probability. Please stop calling it that. What should I call it? Literally anything else. They fought about the pressure, the planning, the way Vivian turned everything into a project. Then fought about fighting about it. Then had makeup sex that was significantly better than optimally timed conception efforts. 2 weeks later, the test was positive. Vivian stared at it for a full minute, not quite believing. Caleb found her sitting on the bathroom floor, still staring. Is that positive? It's positive. He sat beside her. How do you feel? Terrified. Excited. Nauseated, but that might be early symptoms or panic. She looked at him. We're having a baby. We're having a baby, he repeated, like testing the words. They sat there on this bathroom floor, holding each other, processing this new reality. Then Ella knocked on the door. Why are you sitting on the floor? Did someone get sick? Vivian and Caleb looked at each other. They'd planned to wait, to make sure everything was progressing normally before telling her. But looking at Ella's curious face, Vivian couldn't hold it in. We have news, she said. You're going to be a big sister. Ella's eyes went huge. Really? Really. The little girl screamed. actually screamed with joy, then launched herself at both of them, talking so fast her words jumbled together about baby names and sharing her room and teaching the baby about elephants. The pregnancy was harder than Vivian expected, morning sickness that lasted all day, exhaustion that made thinking difficult, a body that no longer followed her commands. She'd built a career on control, and pregnancy was the opposite of control. "I hate this," she told Caleb at week 12 after throwing up for the third time that morning. "I know. Everyone says it gets better. It's not better." "It will be. Eventually. You're placating me. I'm supporting you." By week 16, the nausea finally eased. By week 20, she could feel the baby moving. By week 24, she'd grudgingly admitted that maybe this was worth it. Ella was obsessed with the pregnancy, talked to Vivian's stomach constantly, read the baby books, attended every ultrasound appointment. When they found out they were having a boy, Ella immediately started planning. "We need to teach him about science and elephants and how to cheat at card games." "We're not teaching him to cheat," Vivian said. "Daddy taught me." "Daddy's methods are questionable, but effective," Caleb said, not helping. Sterling Global adapted to Vivian's pregnancy. She worked from home more, delegated even more than before, trusted her team to handle things she would have insisted on managing personally 2 years ago. The company continued thriving. Turned out she really wasn't indispensable. "How does it feel?" Marcus asked during a video call. "Realizing we don't actually need you." Liberating and slightly insulting. Can it be both? Definitely both. At 38 weeks, Vivian was done. Huge, uncomfortable, unable to sleep, and convinced she'd be pregnant forever. "Women do this multiple times on purpose?" she asked Caleb. "Some do. They're insane. This is insane. I'm never doing this again." "Okay. I mean it. One biological child. That's it." "I believe you. You're placating me again." "Little bit." Labor started at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. Vivian's water broke while she was checking email, because of course it did, and suddenly everything was chaos. Caleb grabbing the hospital bag, Vivian trying to remember breathing techniques, Ella waking up confused and excited. "The baby's coming," Ella announced to Rosa, who'd arrived to stay with her. "I see that, Pequeña. Let your parents go." 14 hours later, 14 hours of pain and exhaustion and Caleb being annoyingly supportive, James Alexander Rowan entered the world screaming his displeasure at leaving the comfort of the womb. "He's perfect," Caleb said, tears streaming down his face. "He's wrinkly and weird-looking," Vivian said, also crying. "But yeah, he's perfect." They'd chosen the names carefully. James for the father Vivian barely remembered but loved anyway. Alexander to reclaim the name from his uncle's crimes and make it mean something better. When they finally brought him home 3 days later, Ella was waiting with a handmade "Welcome Home Baby Brother" sign and enough excitement to power a small city. "Can I hold him?" "Sit on the couch first," Caleb instructed. "Support his head. Gentle." Ella cradled James like he was made of glass, her face serious with responsibility. "Hi, baby. I'm your big sister. I'm going to teach you everything." "That's what worries me," Vivian muttered. The first months were brutal. Vivian had thought pregnancy was hard, but newborns were a whole different level of difficult. James ate every 2 hours, slept in random chunks, and cried for reasons they couldn't always identify. Vivian, who'd built a career on problem solving, discovered that babies didn't respond to logic. "Why is he crying?" she asked Caleb at 3 a.m., rocking James for the dozenth time. "Because he's a baby. That's what they do." "But I fed him, changed him, burped him." Sometimes they just cry. You have to accept not having all the answers." "I hate not having answers." "I know." Caleb took James, walked him around the darkened living room. "But you're doing great anyway." Sterling Global gave her 12 weeks of parental leave, ironic since she'd signed the policy herself 2 years ago. She spent the first 6 weeks convinced the company would fall apart without her. Spent the next 6 realizing it was fine, Marcus had everything under control, and she needed to let go. "I'm becoming obsolete," she told her grandfather during a video call. "You're becoming a parent," Richard corrected. "Different skill set. Harder to master." "I'm terrible at it. I can't figure out why he cries. I keep forgetting which bottles are clean. I fell asleep while pumping yesterday. And you're still showing up, still trying. That's all anyone can ask. When she returned to work, it was part-time at first. 3 days a week, 6 hours a day, leaving immediately when meetings ran long. Her team adapted. The company survived. Vivian learned to check email without immediately responding, to trust others with decisions, to be okay with good enough instead of perfect. "You're different," Marcus observed during her first week back. "I haven't slept in 4 months. Of course I'm different." "No, I mean you're calmer, less intense, more human." "Are you calling me inhuman?" "I'm calling you improved." Vivian threw a stress ball at him, missed, blamed exhaustion. By the time James was 6 months old, they'd settled into a rhythm. Not perfect. Nothing with a baby was perfect, but functional. Vivian worked 4 days a week. Caleb managed his consulting firm from home, and they tag-teamed childcare with the efficiency of a military operation. Ella was an enthusiastic big sister, constantly wanting to help feed James or pick his clothes or teach him things he was far too young to understand. "He needs to learn about fractions," she insisted. "He's 6 months old," Vivian pointed out. "It's never too early for math." "Please don't turn him into a baby accountant." On James's first birthday, they threw a party that was probably more elaborate than necessary. Both sets of grandparents, Marcus and his new boyfriend, colleagues from Sterling Global, Ella's friends from school. The penthouse was packed with people, all celebrating this little boy who'd turned their lives upside down. "He's going to think this is normal," Caleb said, watching James smash cake into his face with gleeful abandon. "What, having a party? Having 50 people celebrate his existence, being loved by this many people?" Vivian watched her son, covered in frosting, giggling as Ella tried to clean his face. "Good. That should be normal." Later, after guests left and James was asleep and Ella was crashed on the couch, Vivian found herself on the terrace again. 3 years since the forced marriage. 3 years since her life had imploded and rebuilt itself into something unrecognizable. Caleb joined her, as always. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I don't recognize my life anymore. In the best way." "No regrets?" "About what? The marriage? The kids? Cutting back at work?" "Any of it." Vivian thought about the woman she'd been 3 years ago. Alone, driven, measuring her worth in quarterly earnings. Thought about the woman she was now. Married, a mother to 2 kids, working reasonable hours, and actually living her life. "No regrets," she said finally. "I miss the control sometimes, miss feeling indispensable, but I don't miss being empty." "You were never empty, just convinced you had to be." "Maybe." She leaned against him. "Thank you." "For what?" "For showing up that day at City Hall, for not running when things got complicated, for teaching me that winning isn't the same as living." "You taught yourself that. I just provided context." They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the city lights. Somewhere inside, their children slept, their family built from necessity and contract and choice. "I love you," Vivian said. "For real this time." Caleb laughed. "You said that 3 years ago." "I meant it more this time." "Fair enough." He kissed her temple. "I love you too. For real, for always, for however long we get." 5 years after the forced marriage, Vivian stood at a podium in Harvard Business School, giving a lecture on leadership and work-life balance. The auditorium was packed with students hungry for her secrets, her strategies, her path to success. "You want to know how I did it?" she began. "How I run a multi-billion-dollar company while having a family and something resembling a personal life?" Hands shot up. Note-taking began. "I stopped lying to myself about what success means. For 15 years, I measured my worth by stock prices and market share. I worked 80-hour weeks because I thought that's what success required. I sacrificed relationships, health, and happiness because I believed the myth that you can't have everything." She pulled up a slide. "Here's the truth. You can't have everything, but you can have what matters. You can build a career and a family. You can be successful at work and present at home. You can lead a company without destroying yourself in the process." "How?" a student called out. "By delegating, by trusting your team, by accepting that you're not actually indispensable, by recognizing that the company will survive without you micromanaging every decision." She smiled. and by getting very comfortable with being imperfect. After the lecture, students mobbed her with questions, some about business strategy, others about managing teams, a few brave ones about how she balanced toddler tantrums with board meetings. "I don't balance them," she admitted to one student. "I juggle them badly and hope nothing breaks. Last week, I took a conference call with James screaming in the background and Ella trying to show me her homework. It was a disaster, but the deal still closed." "So you just accept the chaos?" "I accept that life is messy, that perfect is impossible, that showing up imperfectly is better than not showing up at all." On the drive home, she called Caleb. "How'd it go?" he asked. "I think I convinced a room full of business students that work-life balance is possible. Or I convinced them I'm insane. Hard to tell." "Probably both." She heard James babbling in the background. "We're making dinner. Ella's helping. It may be inedible. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Take your time. Traffic's bad. We'll save you some potentially inedible food." 20 minutes later, Vivian walked into chaos. Ella was mixing something purple in a bowl, James was in his high chair throwing vegetables, and Caleb was trying to prevent a kitchen fire. "I'm home," she called out. "Mommy!" Ella ran over, careful with her purple mixture. "We're making dinner surprise." "I'm surprised already." "Try it." Ella held up a spoon of something that looked deeply questionable. Vivian tried it. It was terrible. "It's delicious," she lied. "Really?" "Really." "Very creative," Caleb mouthed "liar" over Ella's head. Vivian mouthed back good parenting. After dinner, which was actually inedible, and they ordered pizza, Vivian helped with homework while Caleb handled bath time. James crawled around collecting toys, babbling to himself. Normal evening chaos. Later, after kids were asleep, Vivian and Caleb collapsed on the couch. "I'm exhausted," she said. "Same. I have 3 meetings tomorrow and a conference call with Singapore. I have a project deadline and James's doctor appointment. We're terrible at this. We're doing fine." Caleb pulled her close. "The kids are alive, the company's thriving, we haven't killed each other. That's success." Vivian laughed. "That's a very low bar." "It's a realistic bar." On their 5th anniversary, the real wedding, not the City Hall version, they didn't do anything elaborate. Just dinner at home, kids in bed early, wine on the terrace. 5 years, Caleb said. "You think we'll make it to 10? "I think we'll make it to 50, maybe 60 if medical science cooperates." "Ambitious? I'm an ambitious person. You knew that when you married me. Both times." "Both times," she agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, the city spread out below them. 5 years since a contract marriage had turned into something real. 5 years of chaos and compromise and learning to be better than they were. "I'm happy," Vivian said. "That's weird to say out loud, but I'm actually happy. Not winning? Not always. But happy anyway." Caleb raised his glass. "To being happy anyway." "To being happy anyway," she echoed. They clinked glasses, drank wine, and watched the city lights blur into the distance. Inside, their children slept. Tomorrow would bring new chaos, new challenges, new opportunities to fail and try again. But tonight, they were happy. And that, Vivian had finally learned, was what actually mattered. Not the quarterly earnings, or the stock price, or the market share. Not the perfect house, or the flawless children, or the impressive career. Just this. 2 people who'd chosen each other, kept choosing each other, and built something worth keeping in the process. Success, it turned out, wasn't about winning every battle. It was about showing up for the war, about being present, being imperfect, being human enough to admit you didn't have all the answers. It was about purple fractions and inedible dinner surprises and falling asleep on couches with people you loved. It was about choosing connection over control, family over perfection, living over winning. And Vivian Hart, who'd spent her whole life pursuing victory, had finally discovered something better. She'd discovered home.